Hello. Hey, you. Okay. First things first. If you turn back and look at the camera, you can say hello with me to our friends in Europe, and good morning to those of you in Latin America. So I hope that you enjoy this open mind, even though you can be here physically. But maybe, just maybe, we can fix this in the next edition. So, welcome to everybody. I can see new faces over here, so that's a good thing for us. And I will try to explain a bit about what does mean open mind. And also, I can see well-known and familiar faces. So, thank you so much for your support to support this humble initiative. We are in spring, but it feels like a summer, so it's a bit scary. But we are in the second edition, so we survived the first one, which means that there were a lot of effort to get here, right? So thank you so much to our supporters, internally and externally. It's up to you. It's up to you whether we have a third edition. So no pressure. Okay. So what is open mind? It's not easy to answer this. But Open Mind is a place. It's a place to share. It's a place to inspire. It's a place to meet new people, to open our minds to a new way of thinking. And that's probably uh, the best purpose. But foremost is a place to enjoy a good afternoon and to have some drinks also at the end. And we are really happy that we can bring to you this open mind because there is no other purpose than to be better of us just by sharing this Agora together. Okay, so the topic, you know, the innovation guys, we always love to put topics on top of the topic. So the topic today is mind your gap because yes, everyone here, me, you, everyone, we have a gap. We have a gap when we are envision or we are trying to solve a problem, right? Sometimes, as our friend Marcel told us, is because we have to see with different eyes, right? The same thing. We are proud that today our speakers will share with us how they envision and how they tackle a problem with a different point of view, probably, to change society, to improve companies, and to literally save lives, right? So thank you to all the speakers for coming and share with us. We are really delighted that this is an all-woman event, which means that I have to lead the stage and hand over to Natalia, and we are delighted that Natalia take control of the event. So I hope you enjoy. I will be here by the end of the event, but from now and so on, there is 4 women leading this Open Mind Hub for us. Thank you so much.
Good to know you're not a woman. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. We just heard the news that Pacheco is not a woman. And well, I don't know if that's politically correct. For those who are recording this, please delete that. So my name is Natalia de Esteban. I know a lot of you, but I don't know some of you. I'm part of the Astara family, and I come and go. So I'm not in Madrid office all the time. So that's why probably you think, who is she? I'm not one of the presenters. My role here is small. I'm just happy to have been invited here to present not just the topics, because you've all seen the bios, you've seen the briefings that the invitation contained, and I don't want to steal anybody's thunder here. So I'm really going to hand over to the presenters, 3 amazing women that are thought leaders in what they're going to tell us. In planning this event, and I came into it a little bit late, but I think it's fair to say that this is informal. It's supposed to be interactive. Some of you would have been in roundtables or conferences where you just sit there and listen to it, wishing it was over. So hopefully, this is not one of those events. Especially towards the roundtable point, I'm really going to put an emphasis in making this as interactive as possible. So the presenters are going to talk. They have their presentations. When they finish, you're going to be able to ask questions. Otherwise, it wouldn't be, what you expect. But I would encourage you to do those questions kind of quickly, like 2 or 3, because then we have time to really discuss. There's no topic out of limits. So, if you're more techie, and I don't want to look to that corner, you can ask techie questions because they're techies. If you want more of a business vision, same applies. If you're more interested in, and as they're going to talk about impact a lot, impact is going to be a word that we're going to hear a lot. So if you want to hear more about impact and real cases, just ask. And it doesn't matter that you interrupt. I would ask that you allow them to get them flow going, but then the dialogue should be interaction. I hope this doesn't become just Q&A, because it's a bit ping pong otherwise. So in terms of timings, each has around 40, 50 minutes. That doesn't mean they're going to fill the space, because then if they don't, then we have more time to talk about it. So we're going to have a sequence of 3 presentations. Then we're going to let you have a little break. And then we're going to come back for that dialogue. And in that break is 10 minutes, by the way. So don't linger too much, because then when you're back, we'll go through the roundtable, and we'll get to the DJ, drinks, food, and all those things that you are already looking forward to. So out of including our colleagues that are joining us in the Astara family countries or remotely through the YouTube link, we're going to be interacting with them. And there will be colleagues here that are going to just hand us a few questions just so that everybody feels included. You want to ask? You know, we need to see you. So just as well put your hand up, and then we'll just hand you the mic, and then we can talk as free as you like, really. As I say, informal, relax, participate, because you've heard Pacheco that it depends on you whether or not there's a third event, and at the end of today, he's going to tell you how exciting the third event is, so better make this one a good one, okay? So, any questions? No, we're ready to go? We're ready to go. So, it's a good sign, you think? I don't know. Regarding the roundtable, since there are no questions now, just in case it takes you a little bit to warm up, we've prepared a few questions to get us going, but that's not the spirit, so I would hope the questions come from you, okay? So we're gonna give it a go and invite our first presenter, Zinnia. Zinnia comes from Mexico. It's a little bit hybrid story between Mexico and France, and later on, by the way, in the roundtable, you're gonna have the opportunity to hear more about their personal experience, so that's why I'm not majoring too much in the bios here. And her presentation is about policy impact bias. Those are 3 keywords that have stayed with me when I read it, and I'll hand you over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalia. So, okay, my presentation. Perfect. So I will talk today. Hi, hello, good afternoon for all the persons here and in Europe, and good morning for Latin America. I will talk today about human AI systems, especially with this application for social and public policy decisions. So I came with a framework about some mitigation strategies to be ethical, whatever that means. But not only for social and public policy decisions, but in general for all human AI systems, you can apply the same framework. And but especially, as you imagine, in this type of sector, you need to be very accurate with your models, because all the society is in danger because of the decisions of this human AI system, right? I will talk an introduction about some examples of bias, of representativeness of minorities, etc., etc. Then I will present you these mitigation strategies. Then some use cases that we worked in my NGO, Data Pop Alliance, and a final conclusion for you. So as introduction, of course, some examples. First of all, we have this one of healthcare. I think that you heard maybe during the COVID pandemic that all the healthcare system in general is very biased to certain type of persons, right? So at this moment, we highlight together that we need more diverse data to avoid perpetuating inequality in medicine in general, in all type of different healths, different problems of health that we can have as a society. Another bias that is very dangerous is this predictive policing algorithms that are very racist in general, and they need to be dismantled. Why they are very racist? This type of bias is, in general, is directly linked with the structure of the societies that we have. All the legal system for crime is very biased. It's different when you are, I don't know, a migrant in Europe, how the legal system will treat you, that if you are an European whatever that means persons. Okay, so this is very, very, very racist, but this is a racism that is copied for the reality to a human AI system. And this one, I don't know if you know this artificial intelligence chat. It was the first one public, a Twitter chatbot, that it stayed, I think, that less than 24 hours online. Why? Because directly this chat start being racist about with all the information that people send to this chatbot. So this chatbot is the first example with public data that highlight the importance and the dangers to have an AI system and the data that we input in these systems. Then this is in TAI was in 2016, okay, long time ago in terms of technology advance. But now we have this Midjourney. I don't know if you know this one. It's a create artificial intelligence creation of image. So if you look inside Midjourney and you put most beautiful people, look at what this algorithm that is working now today, okay? Look what type of pictures this algorithm show you. Another example, a CEO, okay? Crazy, right? It's an algorithm now, and people are using this algorithm. Our child are using this algorithm. Another one, a genius. So sorry, young ladies, you are not genius, right? Secretary, but we can be secretaries, okay? It's crazy, right? What is happening here? And this is the type of artificial intelligence that we are using, all of us, and our young people are using too. So it's something wrong, okay? So how do we create human AI system to improve social and policy decisions that can reliably help achieve fair and equitable outcomes? Not only these systems with the impact of social and policy decisions. We can use this human AI system for all, well, this framework that I will show you, we can use it in all type of human AI systems. First of all, well, after a lot of research that we have nowadays, we can divide in three areas all the strategies that we need to put inside. These strategies are not easy at all. We have a very big challenge here. Some of them sometimes are impossible to nowadays with the technology that we have to put in practice, but more or less you can have an idea of what we can create. So first of all, it's a clear collaboration between humans and the AI system. Second, fairness and equity in the entire cycle of the AI system. And third, the third stage is reliable, robust, and resilient AI systems. I will explain each of these one. So the first one, collaboration between humans and the AI system. Here, the most important strategy, the most important stage is an integration of human feedback all the time in the process and in the test and in the improvements and in the new versions. All the time, we need the human feedback. Second, to create these interpretable, explainable AI systems for users to improve the decision-making process. That is, this black box, no, is not, we need to avoid this type of algorithms, right? Third, especially in the sector where I work, but sometimes in other sectors, okay, you can use it. It depends on the impact of the AI system. Then the third one, improvement of the prediction scores and or KPIs. I will explain that with an example. And then the adaptation to the context and resource of the implementation of the AI system. It's very different if we implement an AI system in Spain, in Europe, maybe, than if we implement the same system in Liberia, for example, or in South Africa, or in other region that it is totally different, the culture, the way of design systems, the way of the use of the technology, etc., etc. So for the integration of human feedback, this part is integration of data, right? And inside this data, we have the traditional and non-traditional data. This difference, we don't have a specific meaning about that, but in general, traditional data is the data created by humans, for example, surveys, National Institutes of Statistics, all day they have traditional data. And then non-traditional data, it's this type of data that is created by machines, okay? So we don't talk now about big data. Why? Because most part of the companies that share data, for example, Meta, that are sharing data, they are sharing big data because backstage is big data, but they are sharing with a process that not, for us, the final users, is not big data at all, okay? So, but it is not traditional data because it was created by machines, okay? So we have these data sources, but what happens if there is no data about the subject, the problem, the issue that I want to solve? For example, I want to solve the gap of, I don't know, poverty in the favelas in Brazil, but specifically the favelas with young people in Brazil, or in IT, for example. IT now that they are having a lot of problems because of violence. I want to know more about violence with the young people. I don't have any data there, any data. So I can't say, no, it's impossible for you to have a human AI system or minimum a data analysis. No, I can do that. I want to help IT, right? So what happens if there is no data? What happens when my data does not reflect reality? Here, for example, we have underreporting of gender violence, for example. Why? Because in general, women don't report. So I don't have the accurate data in that case. How can I be sure of the accuracy of the available data? How I know this is the percentage of underreporting of women of violence, for example, gender violence, if I don't know exactly the reality? So that is a problem. And how can I integrate that knowledge and research generated in the subject into my AI system? So I can't be an engineer that have a great idea of an AI system without taking into account all the research before a subject, right? I saw a lot of startups trying to measure, I don't know, violence against women, for example, but they don't know anything about gender. So they need experts in gender. They need all the information that the research, the experts, the organizations create before this AI system. So how can I integrate that into my system? This is something that we can integrate as qualitative data into the process of the design of the system. How? With focus groups, for example, maybe focus groups of experts, maybe focus groups of young people in IT, maybe focus groups of women, for example, interviews with experts, interviews with the researchers, and something that we use all the time, an advisory council for development, guidance, and ethics. That is a name of code. It's important to have an expert per country and region that has exactly the picture of what is happening there. Another that has the ethical principle of investigation and ethical principles of management of data, okay? Because sometimes this data can be very sensitive and we can't share this type of data, so we need all these ethical principles. The second characteristic is about the algorithms. So the idea is to have interpretable algorithms that any person can, all the persons can understand these algorithms, reduce the number of iteration of data. If we have more data, more interactions, we can then, after a lot of interaction, it will be difficult to explain the algorithm that I am using. A clear documentation of each stage, always, and validation of the decision makers. So the decision makers need to know exactly how the algorithm is working to validate if it is a good idea or not to use this algorithm. Then improvement of the prediction scores and oral KPIs. This is about the output that I am creating in this algorithm. How can I improve my human decision? This is something that all the decision makers, especially in public policy, they ask themselves. So how can I improve my human decision about I want to eliminate poverty in Madrid? How can I improve as a government my decision? So this is not an easy answer, of course, but I need to ask to a human how you can improve this. And then, if this improvement, I can't implement, if it is possible to implement this improvement into my AI system, right? So I need always to have this feedback human machine. And adaptation to the context. This is something about the resource that I have. First of all, the human resource. Of course, my team, an engineer team, or my AI team that is creating this human AI system need to be diverse and representative team. About the natural resource, and this is very important, benefit against cost of the AI system. Sometimes AI systems are created, they are taking a lot of natural resource. For what? Something that it's not necessary for the humanity, right? So I think that it's time to be very careful about what we are creating with technology. And of course, sustainable. In this part, and in the sector that I work, sustainability it's very important because we need to implement all this type of human AI system in countries that they don't have financial resource, right? So the sustainability need to be a part of my human AI system. About fairness and equity, I think that you can imagine exactly what I will talk about, but this is this fairness and ethic need to be implemented in each part of the cycle of the process of my human AI system. So the scope, formulation, design, development, validation, and deployment, and audit each one of these parts about equity and fairness. So about the scope, I need to ask and define in which country or region I want to implement this human AI system, what kind of users I have, the objective of this system, and the final outcome, what I want that the artificial intelligence can give me. Second one, the formulation. In this part, I need to do a table of challenge and risk of this type of systems, map previous tech-based deployments to look for information about if it was good, why, if it was not good at all, why, etc., and of course, literature review to understand what research experts organization did before my artificial intelligence system. The design, here I will talk about the data sources that I have. If I don't have data sources, I need to be very creative to create or to collect my data. the algorithms that I will use. Of course, these algorithms need to be, as I told you before, interpretable algorithms. The outcome instrument, in which way the final user will have the final decision of the AI system. Is this decision the prescription, really, that you need to do this, or only the AI system will show, I don't know, a dashboard maybe, and is the human that will take the final decision. Of course, development and validation, with test and validation, all this part of engineering, and the deployment, that is to automate the process. Well, previous part is more of the data scientist, and the deployment of the data engineering. And the last part, reliable, robust, and resilient AI system. Here, I need to focus in all this part of regulation of data privacy and security of my system, limit the impact of AI systems on critical decision makings. For example, do we want politicians that are an AI system? Yes or no? That is part of future regulation, I think, that we will have. Ensure safety and security of the AI system against hacking, for example, against hacking and putting inside bias or whatever type of hacking that you can imagine. And the last one, resilient to shocks. What I mean about shocks, situations of crisis, for example, a war, for example, a COVID situation, that the artificial intelligence system can be resilient and can have accurate information in real time. This was a very important subject during the COVID situation. Why? Because we didn't have data in real time for any country. So at that time, it was very difficult to track what was happening in real time. So at this time, we decided that this type of human AI system need to be very resilient and to try to find information in real time of all the sources that we have with big data. Any question here? Maybe a little pause? No? Okay. Okay, let's continue with some use cases. And maybe with these use cases, you can see more or less how do we work. The first use case is about a data source that we use and is very, is very useful for human development, is the cold data records, CDRs. So why we use CDRs? These include useful data elements, relatively simple to aggregate, analyze, and interpret, and can serve as inputs into multiple categories of mobile indicators analysis. So about useful data elements, we can use the number of calls, the number of SMS, the localization, about the simplest way to analysis. These are very potentially replicated. If you create an algorithm to analyze the CDRs, this algorithm can be replicated in all the telecom companies. And for example, you can have location, financial information, demographics, identity, social networks, sentiments, environment condition. You can have a very big picture of different type of data. Here you have a table. I will only use some information. For example, if you have the financial and economic data, the CDRs, mediation and billing system, contain spending, tariff, and rating info on subscribers. So this can be useful for poverty, for example, the levels of poverty. And of course, with a scope of spatial granularity, very, very close, because it is the spatial granularity of the antenna. So this is very useful for human development. Demographic data, we can have sentiment and trends. This one is very, very complicated because it is directly with the text of the SMS. Of course, now we can't have this information, but a long time ago, we had access to this type of information. So, for example, if I can access to historical data of CDRs, what can I do? I can do evaluation and assessment of what is the state of art of any problem that I want to solve. If I have current data, I can measure the real-time situation of the CDRs. For example, when you have a shock, an earthquake, a climate change problem, you can have in real time where the population is located, and you can help directly this population, and you can see what are the trends of migration of this population in real time. And in the future, if you can predict, of course, the use of CDRs, and for that you can plan your public policy in different ways. So some areas of impact, for example, income and poverty, GDP estimates. Of course, in Europe, we have national institutes of statistics that estimate very well our GDP. But in other countries, we don't have any idea about that. So here we can have a source of information to do that. Assessment of mobility restriction, this one is exactly about COVID situation. Post-disaster refugees reunification, where is the people? Here, for example, we used a use case that we used was in Lebanon about the Syrian refugees. We used the CDRs of a company that had a plan only for refugees, and in that case, we can map where these refugees were in Lebanon. So it was easier for organizations to know and to give them help about trying to find the mobility, what type of poverty, to measure the index of poverty, etc., etc. Another, of course, migration monitoring, disease containment targeting, mobile disaster relief, economic downturn prediction, predicting outbreak spread, predicting COVID, for example, or other epidemics, and social unrest prediction. So that you can see the importance of CDRs. Here you have Senegal, the country of Senegal. In the left side, you have the survey coverage of DHS. DHS is an international survey created by USAID in some countries, in some of the poorest countries in the world. So here is the coverage of the survey, and here is the coverage of the network of Sonatel in more or less the same time. So imagine all the information that we can have and the spatial granularity that we can have. Of course, we have limitations, as always in big data. First limitation is the selection bias. The selection bias is how I select my sample. So in this case, as you can see, all the red points are the antennas, okay? So as you can see, in the urban region that is near to Dakar, here Dakar is only antennas, right? So in all these urban regions, you have more antennas than if you live in this region that here, for example, you don't have antennas. So this is a selection bias. You will have more information about the persons that live near the city of Dakar than the persons of the rural side. Another one is this spatial bias. The CDRs, according to the atmospheric conditions, the signal strength, the traffic overload, maintenance schedule, etc. When you try to connect to an antenna, you will connect to the antenna that has the optimal option for you. Sometimes this antenna is not the same, so you will have a bias there because sometimes you will connect it to one antenna, sometimes to another one, sometimes to another one. So this can have a spatial bias. Another bias is this one about the number of cards, SIM cards that you can have. So the ideal case is that one person, one SIM card, but the reality is other. I think that some of you have two telephones, so it's the same person, but with two CDRs. Another one is, for example, a family. Maybe the mother has one cell phone, but she shared or he shared the cell phone with their children. So you have the same SIM card with different persons. Another one is that you can have a SIM card with other type of these technical things. And the last one, the persons that doesn't have a SIM card, right? In general, these are the children and the old people. So this is a minority in terms of big data. In big data in general, these two type of groups of persons are not represented at all. Another important issue, maybe in Europe, I don't know, I didn't found any literature review about that, but for example, here is Rwanda, yes. Look, the persons that are in red are the persons that have a telephone, and in yellow, the persons that don't have a telephone. So as you can see, this depends, for example, education, right? So here the owners, you will have the persons with higher levels of education, okay, are owners. Always you will have more persons with high levels. Then in income, for example, you have income rural, income urban. This is in urban, you will have more people with telephones that are with higher salaries. Here is different in the rural side. So you don't have the same representativeness in each group according to which has a telephone or no. So we need to be very careful when we interpret these CDRs, because maybe they are not accuracy according to the population that I have. Some mitigation strategies, accounting for coverage, that is exploring ways to incorporate data from other data sources. For example, and here is very, very important, when we have information, in this paper, they talk about, and it's something that we need to use always when we use big data, is to use the official statistics and to understand the bias that my big data has according to the real population that I have. So include other type of data, and this can help me to account, to review my bias, or to know exactly how biased I am. Of course, they are topics that I can't know. For example, violence, gender violence. We don't know what is the real number. But in other cases, demographic in general, we have the information for all the countries, so I can know exactly how to measure my bias. The time period selection. If I am using, for example, official statistics from 10 years ago, maybe now they are not reliable at all, because I have this COVID situation in the middle. Maybe a lot of people migrate to other countries. I don't know what is happening, right? And understanding location and specificities, that is really have the information of the people that I want to know, or the region or the country that I want to understand. Here in this paper, that one of the authors is Emmanuel Etouzet, the director of DPA, they show a mathematical way to include this National Statistics Office statistics data that I can introduce into CDRs to avoid bias. The second use case is exactly violence against women. I think that Elinor will talk more about it, but only to have a reflect about how to use this ethical part. For example, in Latin America, only 12% has report incidents of violence against them. Who is reporting? Where is reporting? And what factors enable and hinder this capacity to report? What is happening with this report? So the theoretical framework is exactly to use my data, traditional and non-traditional data, my qualitative data, that it was interviews, semi-structured interviews, and academic, public, and CSOs, persons, experts that give us their inputs. Of course, literature review in the 3 languages of Latin America, and this code. This code, we present the results to this code of experts, and they share with us their feedback according to each part of the process that we were creating. Of course, as you can see, I talked before of CDRs, that is a very important data source for AI systems or for data analysis, but in public policy, we can't create, it will be unethical to create something that is biased, okay? One of our stakeholders for these projects exactly of violence against women, they want a very human AI system that create a public policy and help the governments to avoid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we didn't have the data. We can't create this human AI system. It's not possible. It's unethical, right? So now, during this research, we create a framework of violence against women. And the first one, for example, we talk about these factors of which women are reporting, studying the context of each woman that are reporting. And this is about the capabilities, okay, of reporting. These capabilities is about the opportunities the state offers, which facilitate or hinder the possibility of report register of a woman, right? As an example, this study we created in Mexico City, in Sao Paulo, and in Bogota in parallel. And in the 3 cities, the rate of violence were higher in the center of the city than outside the city. So this is not possible. Why it was higher in the center of the city? Because women has the capabilities to report, because there were all the structure to do a report. Then there are another problems inside this topic in particular is the conceptualization. So as gender data expert, we wanted to focus only on violence in the domestic setting, but in the data sources that we have intimate partner violence, violence against women and girls, and domestic or family violence. So we need to understand the concept of each database that we used and to try to focus only in the events of violence that we think it was in the domestic setting. Some data problems that we have is the access to these data sources. In Mexico, the data sources was in the open data platform of Mexico City, so it was very easy with an API. In Brazil, we need to create a formulaire to ask for the data. They replied to us 3 months later with the wrong data, so we need to create another formula. So it was very, very complicated. And in Colombia, we partnered with the Secretaría de la Mujer, Women Minister, and they share with us their data. Another important problem is the coverage and data disaggregation. So we need to increase the spatial and time granularity of all this data. Sometimes this data is a national level, sometimes only at the state level, but we don't have the specific granularity for a specific zone of a city, for example. Include more sociodemographic indicators, and this will help people to understand the factors that can improve the register, the quality of the data, of course, improve the conceptualization. This is a nightmare with the persons that use different data sources in violence in general, all type of violence, but in particular in violence against women or gender violence. Why? Because, for example, this type of data, we can ask to hospitals their data, because women go to hospitals after a violence, right? But they will capture this data according to a health system. Then you will ask for this data to the police stations, but they will capture this data, they will collect this data with the needs of a police system. And this data is not interoperable at all. It's a conceptualization that is a nightmare, and you need to be very, very, very detailed to see how you can match all this data. Another important, very important problem that we have, especially in Latin America, why violence against women in Latin America is so important, because we have the highest rates of femicides, right? So we need to prevent, we need to help this woman, and to help this woman, maybe an alert system can help us to see which woman has more risk that maybe to have a femicide or not. And the data governance, of course, and in Latin America is a big problem. Who will be the person, the responsible of all these databases? Police? I don't think so. Feminist organizations, they don't have the data skills in general, unfortunately. National Statistic Institute is outside their scope of work. So who can be the person, the responsible of these databases? Of course, adopt ethical and data privacy guidelines and promote a culture of evidence, data evidence, to improve the public policy of violence against women and girls. Why? Because sometimes this public policy are in the national level, and sometimes in a national level is not. Yes, we can't improve anything with that. Conclusion, there is an organization, Data2X, that they have a lot of information of gender data. So gender equality, we can have gender equality only if we have good data, quality data. Without that, we cannot make informed decisions, and we cannot track if those decisions are improving lives and are improving the gender equality. The last one that I want to show you is this previous example is about a vulnerable group, that is women in general, or gender if you are part of LGBT community. And the last one is about race. In this project, what is the problem that we have? Society needs a clear diagnostic of race issues and gaps to allocate efforts towards racial justice. We have an invisibilization and perpetration of racial injustice because we don't have data disaggregated by race. We have unlimited understanding of racial injustice, and we have a fragmented knowledge of the gaps and barriers to foster race equality. So we are creating a racial dashboard that shows these gaps of racial data to increase the understanding of racial injustice, to broaden debate on the need and use of race disaggregated data, to provide a tool to support policy reforms with data-driven evidence, and to advance advocacy through data-driven strategies. We are launching this dashboard next week in the UN Data Forum in China, and the idea is of this first pilot is to do a comparison between 2 countries of Europe and 2 countries of Latin America that have a Black community, both countries. One is France, the other UK. In Latin America is Colombia and Brazil, and to see which policies, which type of data these countries has, to measure, for example, the racism discourse in social media, to know what is happening in each one of the countries and how the public policy is helping or not at all. In Europe, for example, we have these 2 countries, UK and France. France, by law, you can't ask any person about their race. But the problem is that you don't have any information about the persons that are Black or of another race, right? You don't have any information about that. In UK, you have this information, but maybe public policy of UK is not very accurate about races. In Latin America, we have these 2 countries, Brazil and Colombia. Colombia with very good data sets, but any public policy at all. Brazil, more or less with some public policies, but the data, you don't have a policy about this data collection. So as a conclusion, you can implement this framework. You can be part of this human AI system. Data collection is the first part, so that's why I put emphasis in this part. But in another way, you can implement it as a team, for example, inside a startup group, inside a company, inside an organization. But if you don't have a national regulation or a regional regulation about AI, a lot of things, a lot of sources, tools, for example, the one that I show you, they will be complete bias, and yes, this is dangerous for the society. So the idea, of course, to this regulation is to open the black box of AI, develop algorithm transparency and audits, but to have a regulation about these audits, of course, considering the responsibility of AI actors for the ethical issues at stakes, for example, including engineers and researchers, and carrying out a discrimination impact assessment, create a consultative ethics committee, this is the code that I talked to you, and guarantee the principle of human responsibility. That is how this human AI will give us or not the final decision, in which AI system the AI system can be completely autonomous, or in which AI system we need to have a final human decision. Especially in public policy, of course, or in public services, the final decision, it's important that is the human that have this final decision and the responsibility, right? What is happening with the autonomous cars and the accidents? All this is in a process because no one knows who is the responsible, the real responsible of these accidents. And that's all from my side. Do you have any question?
Thank you. Does anybody have the courage to break the ice? Come on, one. There you go.
Thank you, Zinja, for the introduction. I'm curious about one of the projects you introduced, the one you were going to compare France, UK, Colombia, and Brazil. If you could maybe briefly say a bit more about it, because I found it very interesting, and whether that's what you're going to present next week at the UN Data Forum. Thank you.
Yes, sure. This project, well, I give you this, well, in this one, the idea is to have a kind of dashboard in different topics of racial justice. We will present only the pilot. The pilot is only in the first topic, that it was the easiest data to create this pilot, that this was the public discourse on racism. So for the public discourse, we used Twitter, when Twitter was a good data source. Now we need to find another one. And we use GDELT. GDELT is an incredible open source created by a team that then they are funding by Google. GDELT has all the media, all the press in all the world. You have a data set with all the press in all the world, and you can do text mining to analyze this press. So the idea is to measure the sentiment analysis of different hashtags. For example, for the data forum, we will present the results for Black Lives Matters, how it evaluated through the time after the situation of George Floyd, according to each country. And some of the results, for example, in France, before that, any person talk about racism in France, but after that, you have a real movement about the trends that persons are talking about racism. In UK, it was different. Persons talk about racism before, in Brazil and Colombia too. And then another important result, for example, is the link between this hashtag and the country problems of racism. And we create this link, or we analyze, or we highlight these results. For example, in Colombia, they had a specific problem of racism with a football player, I think. In Brazil was another problem, but this is created in each region. Each country has their own problems of racism. So Black Lives Matters help a little bit to talk more about racism, but in a country level with the problems of each country. So for the UN Data Forum, we will present only this part of racism, public discourse in racism. And the idea is to present the other steps that we will create. The second step is health. So it's a big subject of research. And the third one is climate change. How the gap of data, of disaggregated data by race, this can't improve the equity, but for all the people according to these topics. And we will highlight the healthcare of each country according to race, how do you say, ensayos clínicos, this part of all the medicines that are tested before, etc. Clinical trials, thank you, etc. So in health, we have a big type of research.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else want to chip in?
Thank you very much for the nice talk. I liked it a lot.
Thank you.
So my question is, I mean, I understand that most of the issues come from the fact that the data sets are kind of biased. So eventually we will solve, in an ideal world, eventually we will solve these biases. But what I'm wondering is, if we had a perfect data set and we want to construct like an AI system that solves something in a reliable way, then this always requires that the data set is like very large. So isn't there like a fundamental limit or a fundamental conflict between having reliable data that, let's say, targets healthcare system, and on the other side to be very inclusive with groups that could be small but actually existent? Is there like a way to assess that or to solve that, to overcome this limit?
There's no the perfect database. That's for example, we have different paradigms. First of all, when you have minorities, for example, in which percentage these minorities need to be represented in your data set? If you have, for example, two peoples, I don't know what, two Mexican persons in your data sets, that it's about millions of lines. But here, I think that you need to ask you, and this is part of your design, what is the outcome of your system? If it is a problem, if you have only two Mexicans there in your data set or not, and you need to be more, human to create a data set that you think it's a good one. Okay. Of course, there are a lot of tests now about different type of bias you can measure, etc. But always you need to be very, very human in this decision about the representativeness and of course the impact of your system. For example, a good way to create this is that you have a diverse team. A diverse team can help you to avoid this type of image, because you will say to your team, please check bias and check bias. Of course, the words that I put in this system, it's all people can put it, but directly you see that it is not a representative. Okay, so there directly you see that it's wrong. We need to recreate the database.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. One more question, because then remember, we have the round table, yeah? So I think I'll give you mine, a little bit quicker.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding data, I think everything has been said, and it's clear that we need a good data set that we can get out something. But at the end of the day, I would like to understand a little bit more about the algorithms, because I think at the end of the day, the ethic is coming out of the usage of the data. So you said two things which are basically same, but from different point of views. You said that the police scoring of people should disappear. But later you said we should identify the women who are in danger because they are in an environment which could be, let's say, more probable attacking a woman. So at the end of the day, if the police scoring were in this way, the police scoring would be good. So I would like to understand a little bit more how we should focus on the algorithm to really, and the way to find that we use this data in an ethical way.
Yes, my comment about the police was in a specific region of Latin America that in general police is corrupted and police is with crime gangs related. So that's why in Latin America we don't, yes, I think that the responsibility of these data sources is not a good option. And of course, women and all the society will not be very, yes, will not receive in a good way this type of proposition. That's only to assure you that it was in a specific problem in a specific region. Then, of course, we need to take care of women. So how do we take care of this woman? First of all, maybe we need to alert maybe the police, but maybe we need to recreate another system. And this is not related to my human AI system. My human AI system will only share this information, but this is related to who is receiving this information and which public policy they will take about it. So maybe a special part of the police, maybe another entity that it is not directly the police, maybe health systems, can give more, can help in a better way women. So in one side I have my decision of the AI system, and in the other side, this transformation and this link with the public policy that will be created with the results of the AI system. So I think that, of course, they are together, but we need to divide both cases. That one is of the government, public policy, organizations, etc., and one is the technical part. Is that clear? Well,
Yeah, conceptually, yes, but it's not the answer to how we should use the data. At the
how
end of
you
the
can use the data?
Yeah, I mean, how we make sure that the data is used ethically so that the society at the end of the day,
okay.
they get the best solution out of it.
Yes, in this case, it's clear. It's a complicated case. We are working on it, and we are working on it with different organizations in Latin America to create the good output. Until now, we don't know exactly how we can share this information and to whom we can share this information. So it's not easy. Neither we want to centralize the information because we have a lot of different sources of data, but then what we can do with this data, right? I think that first of all, we need to improve the reporting of women. That, okay, I show you the reporting in Latin America, but it's similar in Europe, it's similar in Africa. All the legal system has a problem in this report, right? So the legal system are not at all accurate with the problem of gender violence.
I'm jumping in now because I think we are going to exhaust all the time. I don't have any. Does anybody?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't want to exhaust all the time on the first presenter. Remember, we have two to go and a round table. So if you have pending questions playing up in your mind, you're going to have to ask them a little bit later, okay? I would like that if during this process you have a burning question that you think, oh, I'd rather say right now or I'll forget, say it, we'll leave it up in the air, we'll pick it up in the round table. So does anybody have a burning question? I ask, Soran has a burning question.
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation, and it's
Does it work? Right. Try to make it quickly. We'll leave it up in the air. Yeah? Thanks.
appreciate it. Yeah, so it's gonna be a super quick question, and thank you for your presentation. It's gonna be a bit of a tech one. The question is, given that devices nowadays are collecting a lot of information about ourselves, say for example Alexa, right, collects information about us on a day-to-day basis and etc. Do you think if the policy and regulations allow for it, that these devices could perhaps address the issue in terms of data collection, in the sense that, let's assume that, I don't know, in a situation where there's a conflict or a fight, the devices could pick up information and relay it to the relevant authorities or something like that? Because I've seen in some cases with Siri, for example, it automatically detects if something goes wrong and it calls the police and stuff like that. So do you think there's a possibility of that happening in the future?
Now we have, some months ago, we have this problem of the war in Ukraine. So fortunately, in Europe, we have good data sets, traditional data sets. So we have more or less information of how many people were where, etc., etc. So big data help us in that moment to understand the trends of migration, for example. And with this information, with this traditional data that we have, we can follow up in real time what was happening with the persons that or different organizations need to help. It's not the same case in all the regions, of course, and sometimes only sometimes for this type of sector, you have the data that you have, and you need to do something with this data. You can't trash this. You can put this data in the trash. So sometimes that maybe it's biased because you are only getting the CDRs, or maybe you are getting the application of mobility or something like that. And with these trends, you need to have a solution, and sometimes a quick solution for humanitarian services. So It depends, as always in artificial intelligence system, it depends of the use case that you are working on. It depends if it's an alert system, quick, that you need to have something quickly, or if you will have time to create it. We can talk later about this, yes. But yes, we can talk later. Thank you.
So we're going to have a change of tempo now, and I'd like to introduce you to Marta. But first, I'm going to ask you a question just by raising your hands. Who in the room plays with ChatGPT for fun or for work? Are you fully aware of what you're doing and the consequences and the implications and how your data is used? Yes, no, so. So Marta's presentation is not about ChatGPT, but she's going to have a play and she's going to let us know how that works. And but before we get there, let me introduce a little bit Marta. Marta comes from Inditex, where she's a data scientist, and she's going to tell us about the practical applications on everything that we're talking about that has to do with automation. So her presentation has a few surprises at the end, and I've just spoiled that. And yeah, let's think about this presentation beyond ChatGPT, but I'm sure you're going to have questions about it. And by the way, before we get going, I've just noticed that there's a lot of people in the back room. If there are questions from there at some point, somebody walk over here and let us know, okay? Thank you. Over to you, Marta.
Thank you. Let's see if we can see my computer. There you are. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Hi, everybody back home or wherever you are. So my name is Marta. I have a weird background. I'm a physicist by training. I have a PhD in computational neuroscience, and I work selling T-shirts at Inditex. That happens. So today I want to give you my view of what a data scientist's job in a company is, what artificial intelligence is, and the new and old things that we can actually do to help a business like yours, a company like the one I work on, and any other company. I cannot give you specific examples of exactly we apply this algorithm in this specific case, but I will give you an overview on things that are possible, and we can discuss which things are possible or impossible in your context too, if you want me to give you a hand there. So first of all, before we are all on the same page, there is a lot of hype about artificial intelligence or the actual approach that we use to leverage it. That is more machine learning. For the purpose of the talks, I'm going to interchange those two concepts, but machine learning is a subset of artificial in general, artificial intelligence in reality. So what is exactly that we are talking about here? I'm gonna probably shoot myself on the foot several times during the talk today, because instead of keeping the hype of this mysticism that is gonna solve all your lives forever and ever, I'm actually put it on the ground and explaining to you that is possibly a bad idea for me in the long run, but I also want to motivate you and inspire you to use these kinds of techniques because you feel closer to them than just these aspirations and further apart ideas. So machine learning is basically the mechanism through which we take some organized, disorganized data, and we tune the values of the parameters of some algorithms, that's what we call training, to match unexpected output, period. I'm telling you, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot several times today. So basically, the idea here is that these parameters in your algorithms that could be of different nature will have some specific values that optimize that input-output expectation that you may have. Okay, for example, if you are working on some very standard use case here, that is churn detection, right? So churn detection, basically you will have some profile data of some of your clients, whether or not they churn in the past. And you want to predict in the future if some other clients will churn in the future. So what you are doing there, you will get your profile data, your specific label, you will feed it to an algorithm, optimize the parameters so the profile data and the labels match as much as possible. Okay, that's a training process, and that is the base of every single machine learning algorithm. The architecture of those algorithms may change. You can have either matrix computations if you want to revisit your high school algebra or the university algebra. I guess you don't, but these guys are useful. They are harder sometimes to implement, but they are very intuitive for many of us, I guess, not for everybody. Then you have the decision trees. Yeah, I mean, the decision trees, those are broadly used. My favorite out there, they convert super well. They have many, many applications. They win competitions. I have won a pair of shoes with a decision tree one. They really work. They are amazing algorithms. They go to many, many times. They have a good balance, complexity versus quality and data predictability. I guess in matrix computation, the parameters you are using is which view of with position of the matrix you are using. In decision trees is at which decision points you split each of the branches of the trees. And finally, the neural networks that can be deep neural networks or not. Those neural networks, the parameters we set up is how many neurons you have in each of those layers and which are the weights in the communication between neurons. So you can say this neuron is going to send the answer to the second layer multiplied by 0.5 instead of 0.25. Okay, those are the parameters that you learn when you do the training. Okay, and that's it, honestly, that's it. These are the difference. I'm a computer, I have a PhD in neuroscience, as I mentioned you, calling these guys neural networks kills my little inside a little bit. They are not really neural networks, but it's fine, let's survive with that. Better publicity that way. We have two big families of types of data. The churn, no churn example would be an example of supervised machine learning, we call it, because you have your data plus an external label you want to force your data to fit into. That doesn't always work, but good luck. That's what we call supervised. And there is another option that is the only data, right? You don't have external label, you let your data tell you how it's organized by itself. That would be the case, for example, of client segmentation, right? You have your data profile, your client profile, and you just make groups of them based on their behavior, but you don't force a pre-conception of how those groups should be, right? That is called unsupervised learning in general, and there are very similar techniques to solve one or the other, and slightly different techniques to train one or the other, and of course, different applications there. Okay. And finally, what can I do with this? I mean, regressions, forecasts, clusterings, classification. I mean, we will get into the details of some specific examples for these guys, but also chatbots, I'm getting there, generating images, any of the thing, the idea behind the scenes is still the same. Okay, you are just looking for the best parameter values that will match your input-output expectation. Okay, sometimes it converges, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always the same idea. To start giving you a concept, so I gave you the standard example, right? I distinguish between supervised and unsupervised data. I told you about some classical approaches to this. One of my favorite examples of going one step further than that were these guys. These guys, the GANs, they feel ancient now. They are 9 years old. 9 years old. When these guys decided on developing this architecture, we all went nuts. This was revolutionary at the time. It's still an extremely good technique, and it's very smart because the system is training itself, right? I was telling you that you need labels and data. Getting those labels can be a manual process that can take forever. Okay, that's very annoying, basically, getting those labels, unless you have them for some reason, like the client's churn. Okay, that's data you have, right? But if you have to go one by one, that can be very annoying. So when they were trying to generate these image generators, in this case, you have some of the results of the original paper here when the same face and postures is being adapted to different reference images with people from different parts of the world. These are all fake images, by the way. They are 9 years old right now. They were very impressive at the time. They still are. The cool thing here is they train the generator. This is the network that is going to make your images later, and the detector, the discriminator at the same time. So after a little bit of initialization, basically, the better the generator gets, the better the discriminator gets, right? Because you have some real images here to compare to. So they were training these two guys at the same time, so they didn't have to label by hand. And that's how they got to go through many, many more processes, many more rounds of training, as we were talking about, that just by having the manual set of labeled images. Okay, and this was revolutionary at the time, and it's an influence for all the other image models that we are going to talk about later on. Okay, so you can be smarter in your applications when you have your data set in the way you label data. This is what I was trying to inspire and to transpire you with this slide. You can be smarter in the way you design your label settings, okay? It doesn't need to be, okay, this is the data set, you give it back to business, or you receive that, and you just have to label every single thing, okay? You can iterate, you can be smarter, you can try to label just the things the algorithm is doubting. You can use techniques like that. They are called human in the loop, they have name, and they are extremely good. I have used them in the past, and they really make the whole process faster, inspired by these guys. Really, it feels ancient, and it was amazing at the time, I guess. So I'm gonna shoot myself on the foot here again when I'm gonna tell you what is my definition of data science, right? So for me, data science is what I call ignorance-driven research. I told you, this is not going well. Why ignorance-driven research? I'm a theoretical physicist by training, okay? So for me, a mature field has 200-year equations on paper that you can solve in your room alone, and that defines every single aspect of the universe. This is how physicists are. The reality is that your specific classification problem, forecast problem that you have today in your company, in your team, is not a piece of work nobody has been working on for 200 years. The reality is that we go to data because we have no clue. If you know what the answer is, you have the answer. Honestly, answer yourself. You don't need these techniques. We use data when we don't know what their answer is, right? And that's why I call it ignorance-driven research, even though it doesn't sound like we are doing anything smart, but bear with me, right? So again, use these techniques when you don't know what you are doing. And of course, you can always add constraints. You can add your own knowledge, generating features, characteristics that you know are going to be relevant for the task. That always helps, always helps. But don't use them if you have an answer. I mean, don't overshoot. It's not necessary. So the first case, useful case that I'm going to talk to you is this one, right? Yeah. It's about the team. I guess you have data scientists in the company already. So for me, a data science team is composed, or it relies on at least 3 profiles. The data scientists themselves, these are the people that develop the models, that think on the training process, that design on the algorithm, that think on the architecture of the algorithm itself, and performs the training, okay? That the statisticians that also code their own analysis to solve the problem, okay? But you cannot do anything, you cannot have an isolated group of data scientists if you don't have data engineers first. And this is something that I have seen, not directly in the companies that I work on, but I have talked to many junior data scientists. They are hired in companies that let's have a data science team. And then you hire this poor data scientist, you put it in the room and say, do magic. The problem there, and this happens, the problem there is if you don't have data engineers, if you don't have data, there is no magic to be done. Okay, so, and it's very common, extremely common to have data scientists working as data engineers till they can actually do the job they were hired to do. This has the issue that when you hire somebody to do data science, they don't have the proper skills to do data engineers. They can be very good, but still they don't want to do that. And they are not gonna be the best. It's a different set of skills, honestly, different set of skills. And I have seen this happening and people complaining about this. So please, if there are any data scientists here, I'm giving you a hand right now. I know this, data engineer is very important. And what is the right ratio between data engineers and data scientists is the $1 million question. I don't know, it really depends on the maturity of your team, how much data you actually have, how well organized it already is. But for sure, 0 is not a good ratio. So please have some. The third role that is relatively new, maybe more unknown, but I think is super relevant right now. Nobody can have a data science team anymore without a machine learning engineer. Machine learning engineers are the people that are experts, maybe on what we used to call big data in a way, right? These people that are able to productivize models, to scale them, to allow them for the next layer of computation to consume your models, or to expose them, to deploy them. They are the machinery of the models themselves, right? This is the alternative, the equivalent of data engineers of data. They are the machine learning engineers. They are the models pipelines in a way. So it's a kind of a new role, but I think it's necessary the moment your team arrives to a certain level of maturity doing models to have a dedicated team that knows how to productivize and make use of those models as efficient as possible. So that's my first use case, successful use case, just have different people in your team. The second one is about MLOps. MLOps is going one step further that I was just telling you, right? MLOps is the whole philosophy of letting data scientists doing the whole thing. But don't leave them alone, come on, you still need the data engineers and the machine learning engineers. So if your team is not very mature, I don't mean specifically if the team is not mature, probably you have some analysts that do their analysis by themselves, some statistical ideas, some reports maybe, that you have some developers that code those ideas and make them into proper code. And then you have some operations team that maintain and deploy that code, right? That has 2 levels of me passing information to the next that delays the whole process dramatically. And also there are some interaction mismatches probably in between, and everything degrades. The more common, hopefully, team will have already data scientists. These guys are able to think on the models and code them as much as they can. Data scientists, we are very bad programmers, sorry. We cannot know everything, but we are getting there, right? These people that at least are interested on coding at some level. But you still have an operations team, okay? Data scientists will now code their models, think on Python, on R, but the deployment is for somebody else. I'm not gonna think on the infrastructure of this. I'm here to think on modelization. What are you talking about? I think, however, that is a pity, because you still have one layer there of here is the model, productivize it. Again, delaying the whole time to market, okay? The time to value metric that I'm pretty sure you want to optimize there. The idea here when we are talking about MLOps is to break that last wall. Of course, you cannot pretend that data scientists are gonna be able to do everything by themselves. Like, I don't believe in the full stack wherever. Nobody can be a super expert of algebra optimization that we were talking about before, and also parallelization of pipelines and deployment. That is very hard. It's very hard. So what I propose here is that your data scientists will be able to deploy their models by themselves because they have tools, easy tools that allow them to do so. For example, as in Inditex, I'm the reference, I'm the coordinator of the MLOps team. We have a very hardcore MLOps infrastructure that allows all data scientists to deploy by themselves. And like literally, that happens every day, several times. They iterate way faster with their stakeholders, because every time that there is an iteration, they don't depend on another group. They just change the parameter, go. And they can do it by themselves, okay? That implies that you have a machine learning engineer group developing those tools for the data scientists. In our case, we are lucky enough that most of our machine learning engineers are also data scientists, or they are developers and users. And when you have to use your own tools, then you make them easier to use and more usable. That's always a good idea there. So this is my second proposal for you, to join the MLOps community and to start allowing your data scientists to serve stakeholders by themselves as soon as possible. And okay, and no, this is not gonna end ever. Another time that I shoot myself in the foot. I'm gonna call everything that we know about machine learning traditional machine learning, because this is not ChatGPT, basically. So when we are talking about traditional machine learning, so everything that we knew until last 2 months is what I explained to you before, right? Is this process of I have the data, I train the model with my own data, and I design a model for each specific of my tasks, right? So I have a problem, I have a data to solve that problem, I train my algorithm, deploy. Okay, I train my algorithm in-house. It's true that for some computer vision problems, we were already not training the whole thing. That's what we call transfer learning. We were basically just training like the first layers and the last layers on the intermediate layers of your deep network, but it was still some training involved that was heavy on your local computer of your on-prem or your own cloud that happened with your data. With traditional machine learning, we have been solving many, many problems in business for a long time, some time. We were saying about forecasting. What can you do, what can you use a forecasting for provisioning? If you know how much you are gonna sell, you know how much you want to buy. If for resource allocation, if you know how much you are gonna sell, you know how you need to put the next effort or to allocate more people or to change the schedule, or to reorganize the tasks of your team, knowing how much work is going to come in one or other direction. So you can think forecasting as a way of helping you not only monitor what you are doing, but also see in the future how you need to behave. And that is general purpose, and it works. I mean, we use these techniques everywhere in every company. There are also another set of traditional machine learning algorithms. I don't know what time is it, but it should be fine. Okay. There are the clustering or recommendation. We were talking about client segmentation. It's these kinds of guys, right? So you can do client segmentation because you don't have a specific label. You can also do recommendations. That is basically either clustering your clients and your products at the same time. And in 1 minute explanation of what recommendation systems are, basically they can recommend you the same thing that the people similar to you just bought, or they can recommend you similar things to the things you just bought. Those are the two main families of recommender systems. I'm telling you, this is very hard. I don't know. I mean, we all used or have used Netflix before, or any other recommendation system. They work sometimes. Sometimes you buy a pair of shoes and 10 minutes later they recommend you to buy another pair of shoes. Sometimes they don't work that well, right? It really depends on how much information they have about you, how well they can profile you. If you are not online all the time or on their site all the time, they don't have a good profile of you, and they basically make those mistakes because the only information that they have is you buy shoes. So they keep recommending you shoes. Like, this person likes shoes, like, but I bought them already. But still, you can be smarter than that, right? When you do your model checks for that. And product clustering, right? You can classify your own products based on their own characteristics to apply different selling techniques, perhaps, to them, or to distribute them in a different way in the world, as you may see fit, that to improve your sales. That's what matters to us. I mean, the other talks were about making the world better, and I'm here trying to sell t-shirts. But yeah, whatever. And finally, classification. So we were talking about churn detection. It could be also about detecting good or bad clients as soon as possible, so you can recommend them new promotions or articles that are going to behave well, so you buy a lot of them, for example. You can also work on internal consistent product labeling, right? If you have some internal process, I don't know, where somebody was labeling by hand something every day for hours, and you have that data, help them run a classification algorithm and do it automatically from now on. That will help them a lot. Pretty sure you have some case like that, and that reduces a lot of the manual labeling. You can also check if the algorithm is not sure, and to check manually those cases when there is some controversy for the algorithm, but you are already making somebody else's lives easier. We did similar things like that, and they work great. They get very happy because they don't have to do that boring manual job. It seems like a small task that is not gonna give you a lot of impact or a lot of revenue, but maybe you have now 2 people that can do something else that requires a brain to do, not manual. So those are kind of classification algorithms when, again, you have your own labels and you applied it to new data, are broadly found. And these are the new guys. Okay, so we call them, or we used to call them foundation models. You can call them large language models. And the paradigm change here is that now we have one model for multiple tasks. And you don't train it in-house. They are trained in large computer facilities that are either governed by tech companies or research organizations like universities, or research startups like OpenAI. Okay, these guys you cannot train in-house because they require huge computers. The best you can do is tune them a little bit, at least a bit less than what we were talking about. You can give them context about your specific problems, but they are out of the box for multiple use cases. Okay, but in reality, the idea of data machine output and tuning parameters still is true still, okay? These guys are not fundamentally different because the architecture changed dramatically in crazy ways. They are just larger. When we are talking about the number of parameter values that we are fitting, we are now talking about billions of parameters, thousands of millions of parameter values that can hold and interpret many, much more data. Many data points, many more examples. But the reality is that the architecture is very similar. It's still a huge neural network, but it's huge. And in the process of generating those huge neural networks, there are still a research project, even though we are all using them now. They are still a research project, and their purpose is still trying to figure it out and to find the limits and the limitation of the networks themselves. Even though they start doing things that nobody expected them to do. One of the things that surprises the most to everybody, that's what they are able to translate. Okay, these guys were not trained with any specific purpose. They were just trained with the whole corpus of text they can find at first, right? But because that corpus of international text is in multiple languages, the machines were able to understand what a grammar is and that they were different grammars in different languages. So they can translate from one language to each other. The same model works in different languages. You can just change the language while you type, when you interact with them, and it still will work. Because basically they just learned that there are grammars behind the scenes and one word goes after the other, and the probability for this word to happen after this other word is higher. So I just give it to you. Okay, that's what they learned, but it's nothing more magical than that, even though it sounds impressive and it looks amazing and scary, and that the machine is talking to me and it knows my life somehow. So we call them all large language models, despite the fact that they could be also multimodal. We call them ChatGPT, that is the one with interface. I will talk about that training in a second a bit more. BART, that is the alternative for Google. I didn't want to leave them behind, even though they are losing the race. We can also talk about GitHub Copilot. So the machine, this huge network, is not only able to translate from one human language to another human language, it's also able to translate from one human language to a computer language, programming language, to be closer to that. That's how GitHub Copilot works, right? You give them a sentence, write a Python code that will, I don't know, iterate over all my items and add them up and return the multiplication by 3. That is written in some code that is your language, and it will be output in another language, that is Python. But it's the same idea, okay? This is this translation idea. It was not, again, those code data were included into the everything data they added, and they were just discovering this and how well it's going. Now, despite of concerns on I'm getting somebody else's code now, that we can discuss if you want at the round table. But the step towards multimodal is the same, right? We're talking a lot about these only language models, but DALL-E, that was a revolution a year ago, or Midjourney, that is still the best out there, or the Stable Diffusion, that is actually made from the Munich University, so you can use it with no cost. You just have to run in your computer. It works also very well. These guys were trained both captions and images at the same time, the caption of the description of the image, basically. And what the whole algorithm learned to do is to find the grammar of the picture. Does it make sense? So every time it learns that every time that you have the word crocodile, I could use a rabbit, that is easy to pronounce. I don't know why I was thinking a crocodile. A rabbit, there is some blurry interpretation with ears, and that's how it looks like. And it also learns the concept wearing a hat, because there are some images when somebody is wearing a hat. Because it learned the grammar of the image, it's again a translation process. The grammar of the image is able to generate an image of the concept rabbit and the concept wearing a hat when you prompt for it. And this is how all of them work, right? They relate and they get to learn all those grammar and conceptual ideas and combine them in the right order for you to enjoy that. I mean, this is the slide when I tell you what you can do these models for. I got completely overwhelmed by all the things that I was reading, all the things that I was thinking on that you guys can use there, or the community can use them for. For starters, I did all my images with Bing, Microsoft Bing. Yeah, I opened an Edge and I used Bing. If you told me 6 months ago that I was gonna find Bing useful for anything, I would have laughed out loud to you for hours. But this is the truth. So I found Bing useful for something, of course, not for laziness, but representation purposes, that these guys are already everywhere. And they are so everywhere that I was tempted. I was talking to Natalia, I was tempted for a while to do the whole presentation with another tool that makes the presentation from scratch. I'm going to show it to you in a second. All the presentations from scratch. Then I thought that, well, you were coming to hear me, not the machine. But basically, this is Tome.app. This is one of many possibilities. You just write a prompt and they make these nice slides for you. And we will go into the examples in a second. I will show you the examples they propose. They are actually accurate. The impressive thing about this is I got the recommendation from this, you're not going to believe this, from a friend of mine that is 13 years old. She uses it for high school. This is how far along we are into this revolution. Like when teenagers recommend AI tools to somebody that freaking works on the field, and it actually works well. So as you can see, it is pretty nice. This is not the only one, okay? There are more options. It generates the agenda with the topics. It also creates the images for you with the text and the title. So you can do predictive analysis for customer retention. That is churn detection, basically, I were talking about. You can do chatbots for customer service. All these images are also automatically created at the same time as the presentation. Recommendation engines. I told you, this guy is copying me. We didn't talk about fraud detection, but when we are talking about clustering, you can also use anomalies as a specific kind of cluster. So you can identify anomalies in your loading processes of your pipelines or the behavior of your sales or whatever time series you may have. In this case, it was used for, I mean, it's not used because this is fake, but the machine is proposing you to use them for fraud detection. That is a broad use case too. I don't know, data entry and analysis and optimization of the management of the supply chain. So again, you can read the text, it sounds reasonable. This has been a thing for a long time, like machines generating text that was grammatically correct. That makes sense for everything. I remember working in academia, and there was still that many years ago, that machine that you could just write a title and it would write a paper for you that didn't make any sense. It was a computer science paper, didn't make any sense, but it was grammatically correct. So you didn't notice it was wrong till a while. That was, I don't know, some years ago. But this freaking thing makes sense. This is an evolution, a very far evolution of what we were doing at the time. And you can edit the title, change the image, say I want on Scratch, say I want something more artistic, or add in more slides, or wherever you want. You can say click here, and we can create a presentation from scratch, add a Twitter title, and whatever. You can create a new presentation whenever you want. And as I mentioned, for the images, I use Bing. If you have a Microsoft computer, you can always rescue Edge from whatever is in your computer and generate all these images. I have the examples here. This was for my last slide you will see in a second, where I was asking for questions, ideas, and I get this weird guy that I didn't pick. And for the other concept, this one's for the data, this one's for decision, this one's for machine, different examples, some things that don't really work. I specifically for a Venn diagram, I didn't get it right, so I have to do it by myself, bummer. And forecast and things like that. Okay, so that should be it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, where do we start? Because I think this could be the beginning of the roundtable, and remember, we're not there yet. Before we get placed to just a couple of questions, I think we're going to get quite a few requests for new recruitment in the team, asking for all those engineers that you mentioned. I can hear some people coming to us to say, I don't have some of those.
You are welcome.
Yeah? So if you want me to do the job properly, hire me 2 or 3 of those. And at the same time, I think the demand on the level of our presentation is going to be higher now that we've seen that we can do it that way. So yeah, thanks for that.
Sorry about that.
Thanks for that. Right, literally, because we don't want to steal the thunder of the round table, and I keep saying that, and yet we overran a little bit before. Let's do a couple of questions. North and south, or east or west? Who wants to ask anything? There you go.
So one question regarding the large language models. Do you know how many hybrid algorithms are used to train those parameters, or are they?
How many what?
For tuning the parameters of the large models, are they using the research groups any other algorithms for also hybrid approaches for training them?
So there are a couple of things there. First, the data itself is all the data corpus they could find. And I know that specifically for ChatGPT, there is not a huge change in the infrastructure of the algorithm GPT-3 that was deployed like 6 months in advance. Basically, they added more conversational data, like specifically conversations between people, and they also added a manual check-in. So basically, they will give some researchers or some testers, some humans, options like, would you rather get this answer or this other answer? And they will feed back those informations into the training set again, like this sentence is preferable, with the hope that they will get that sentence more often as an output. That's why now ChatGPT tells you sometimes, I'm a machine trained, because that was something that the trainers liked. Or when they tell you, when you ask for something deleterious or insulting, it says, I can't. I mean, there are always ways to circle that around. Like, which areas should I avoid to avoid drugs? And then they list you the places where you can buy drugs. But if you ask directly, it will say, I cannot give you that information, right? So they train the algorithm to be more human-likeable. And I have reading some interviews for the original team of OpenAI researchers, and they were saying that was they think that was the tipping point for them, because they were like doing the same algorithm as researchers for a while. People were using it. I had a license for over a year, but not really getting crazy about it, even though I had the license, I could have used it more. But in the moment that the machine could talk to you, or at least you have that feeling in a way that felt nice and relatable, is when the whole thing broke through and is on the news and your grandma knows about it. And it was the human curation. What helps they believe? They don't know for sure, of course.
Anybody else before we move to Eleanor? No? That's just lucky because we're dead on time. So thank you so much for your sarcasm and your wisdom. Right. So this is the last presenter before you break, and I should give you a little warning. The catering people just arrived, but you cannot eat the ham before the round table. So whatever break we go into, we're going to be 10 minutes in and out, but you can't eat or drink yet. So, okay. Eleanor Samuelsson, let's just take, are you ready? Yeah, she is ready. Eleanor Samuelsson, she is from Sweden. She is in Barcelona with her consulting business. She is the founder of Bright Act, and she has an amazing trajectory, which I think it would be fair to say it mixes quite high-tech stuff with high-tech creativity as a graduate for Parsons School, New York. So that's quite interesting that I hope we can get to explore in the break after. So Eleanor's work spans through many areas, and one of the ones that I'm more interested in, perhaps for later, is that she's impacting the lives of 100 million children through her work in UNICEF. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me see if I can get this. Oh, good. And yes. So hello everyone. My name is Eleanor Samuelsson. I'm from Sweden, and we are building the world's first matching tool and the global safety net to help with gender-based violence. And it started out 2 years ago during the pandemic when I met my co-founder. We are currently right now in contact with 19 different countries. We have about 450 experts who are supporting us to think about how we can adjust this platform to the local needs, but also for a global market. We are working primarily with the public sector because they are the ones who are responsible to care for domestic violence. But it's also a sector that has maybe a slightly longer way to go when it comes to like digital solutions and like processes. So we're also helping them to work with this, and specifically with like domestic violence, looking at the systems within like the public sector, it's often the social services that are the least like digitalized too. And we work with NGOs because they're also part of the like system to help. We work with corporations, we work with academia, we work with basically any touch point that could help save lives. Also aligning with the global goals, primarily number 5 for gender equality. There's actually no country in the world who has reached the goals for like gender equality, and sadly now we have also like reversed like the progress that we've made like globally due to the pandemic and also due to the current economic crisis. So the UN Women actually estimates now that we have about 300 years until we reach gender equality. And domestic violence is one of the main
inhibitors for that. So that's how we help out. This is Sophie, who is not here, but she's here in spirit. She's my second half. We met during a hackathon, and this was during the pandemic, and everything was digital at that time. Like everyone was sitting at home in their little caves, like working at home. So when we met, it was actually pretty funny. Like you can see that she's actually standing here like on a step and I'm standing down here because I'm very tall and she's quite short. and then we had this like first day we were like, okay, let's take some like photos because we're gonna need it for like press releases, and since we live in 2 different countries, like let's make that happen. And then we had to make the like adjustments. But since then we've come a pretty long way. Like we are piloting within Sweden right now, like working in a few different regions. People think what we're doing is pretty great, so they gave us a bunch of prizes. Some of them are like most like important female founders within Sweden, rising stars of of the year, IT women of the year, social innovators, and we're also winners of multiple hackathons, which is quite fun. And for us, I don't think we care so much like about the prices, but what's nice is that like domestic violence get a voice in areas where you usually don't see it. Like usually you don't get people talking about tech and like domestic violence. So we're kind of raising like awareness like for the topic. And Sophie, she has a background working within the Swedish public sector. She works with like innovation and also IT strategy. She's also worked for the social services. And I'm currently with like UNICEF, like working at the Office of like Innovation, where I'm helping them with the scaling infrastructure of how to impact 100 million children across 47 countries. So looking at how they can make their processes more smooth and user-friendly. And my background is primarily within like UX design and strategy. And we've been called like hackathon ninjas because that's actually how we started our like company. We met during a like hackathon. It was during COVID. Sweden had created this like Hack the Crisis for people to come together to help save lives. And most people were focusing on these like COVID disease tracking like devices to see how everything spread, but we chose to take a slightly different approach to that, where we focused instead on the shadow pandemic, which came up like during the isolation, where if you're stuck at home with your partner who is hurting you in some way, there can be pretty severe like consequences. And so we chose to look at that. And then we discovered that we were quite good at hackathons. We started winning everything. We went to the EU Commission. They had this hackathon with like 22,000 people. And for that one, we were actually being like investigated by the FBI because they thought we were this like Russian hacker bot. Because the EU like told us, go out on Twitter, be active, because if you do, you'll have a greater chance of meeting interesting partners. So we were like, okay, challenge accepted. Started just cross-tweeting everyone, and this was during the time when there was this big like scandal with like these big profiles like it was like Elon Musk, it was Bill Gates, it was like Obama, who promised to double like the financial compensation for people who put money like into Bitcoin. And so we had the top of the IT security guy of Sweden starting to ask around, like within our networks, because we have a pretty wide like network of like security experts within like Sweden because of the topic that we work with, and one of them like calls us and asks, so I just got a call from this guy and he's asking if you are real people because he thinks you're a bot. And we were like, yeah, we are real. We just had a very quick surge for 5 days when we were tweeting quite a lot and tagging quite a lot of politicians. But that was good because now we have contact with several like equality like ministers all over EU because they saw our post. The hackathons is fun, and it's actually one of the first ways that we started like fundraising for our like product development. Like that's where we got our first money from. It was from winning this. So that was great. And the hackathon is just like 48 hours. You sit like crazy and just hack and build something functional. And we were a team of like 4 people doing that. No sleep. Domestic violence is very real. It's a human topic that deals a lot with the like emotions. It deals a lot with like behavioral patterns that are quite hard to capture in like traditional like data sets because everything is like psychological, it's based on your mental models, perceptions, it's the dynamic between the couple. And this is a poem actually that one of our like ambassadors wrote of her like experience of living in a very like abusive relationship that she also then later left. So when we were working like during the hackathon, like one of the main problems that we saw was that there's no way that you can call like emergency or like contact like emergency services without calling them. But if you're in the same flat with the person who is hurting you, it's really hard to contact like someone. So we thought, okay, let's create a pathway of finding ways to do that. So we started building these like hidden like applications that you could hide inside of other applications. We started doing these like solutions, kind of going back to your question like before, like about the like Alexa. But like if you threw the phone, then we used the gyroscope to like sense that you like needed help, and this would call the police. And I would say, like going back to your question, like that's a really interesting like idea, and I think it's something that could be used maybe with like consent. So the individual gives prior like consent for something like this to happen, and then that would also need to be hidden within the system, which can be tricky because usually partners are quite like controlling and they go into everything you have, but there are ways to hack around it. So this is how we started. And also during the pandemic, the home is actually the most dangerous place for like women. It's not being hit by a bus, it's not cancer. Like most harm to women happen within the home. It's also the place where we need to create the most like support. And also a very hidden place because it's, you know, it's like a closed like matter. So there's a lot of stigma and a lot of shame that's around like domestic violence. And that's what we're trying to break. Like one of the big reasons why we started doing this is really to end like the cycle. So we're looking at it in slightly radical ways because quite a lot of support for like domestic violence today is very focused on helping women, which is good because there's a lot of victims of the more deadly violence and also with the physical and like the sexual like violence that is hurting like primarily women. But right now in Sweden, we're also seeing laws that are criminalizing also the psychological hurt, and that's primarily done by women. So we're a bit curious to see how the statistics now will change, like looking at the abuse of any gender towards any gender, because we don't really have so much data on like domestic violence. We don't have so much data on like relationships with the same gender, like dating one another. And as such, quite a lot of support right now, it's steered towards the stereotype. And we also believe that to break the cycle, you can't just help one side, you need to help the other side too. And if there's quite a lot of stigma for women to seek help, if they're being like subjected to violence or subjecting someone else to violence, there's also maybe in some cases even more stigma for a man to seek help if he is hurting his partner. So we're looking into those patterns too. But there is quite a lot of help that you can get through helplines that are hidden, where you don't need to state like who you are. There are programs. If you look at like statistics data, about 1 in 3 women will be like abused in her lifetime. It's about 6 women globally that are killed every hour because of like domestic violence. And it's a bit unclear what the data is for men, but the estimations are 1 in 6. But it varies. Like I've looked at data for like the US, and in some states you have like 1 in 2 women, 1 in 2 men. In Spain, there's actually fairly low statistics on like domestic violence compared to, for instance, Scandinavia. I think it's about twice as much violence within like Scandinavia as there is here. But I think a reason for that is Scandinavians are more likely to actually like report to the police or like speak to someone about it. So there's also huge biases within the data sets. That's also a problem. And yeah, 48% of murder of like women happens within the home, either by a family member or by an intimate partner. And this is by far the biggest rate of like murders. And this is something that we want to end, and the deadly violence, and we think it can be done. Yeah, like I said, 5 to 10% typically like report to the police. Less than 40% speak to anyone. And this means even family, friends. So 60% of people never say anything. It's an extremely hidden problem, and you for sure know multiple people who either have been subjected to violence or will be or are. It's estimated that about 7% at any given time are in a like relationship where they're being like subjected. So maybe then it's safe to say that there's about 7% who are also hurting their partner, which makes 14% of the population. But there's hope. So some of the problems that we're solving with Bright Act, we noticed fairly early on that support is fragmented. And what I mean by that is that there is quite a lot of support, but it's kind of divided out in multiple areas of society, and typically within the public sector too, it's very siloed. So one department might not speak to another one, and then coming as an outsider seeking support, you might not even know that these departments are there. So we're trying to just map the system and tell people what are they doing, what kind of support can you get, what are you legally entitled to, these types of things. There's no real-time data on this topic, which we think is kind of crazy given that it impacts so many people. And in EU alone, this costs 366 billion euros every year. And a lot of it is done on pen and paper. And we're just what is going on? So there's a lot that can be done there. And we are able to produce real-time data. We're still in a small scale, but this can grow. Also, big lack of IT security. We see quite a lot of organizations using data systems that, or like IT systems that are not safe, like leaking data to the US, which maybe is fine if you're, I don't know, building a like website and you don't care, but if you're talking about something as sensitive as like domestic violence where you might be at risk of being hurt, it's not good. So that's one issue. And usually what we see too, for processes where like collaboration happens, they're very rarely digital. It's usually like a phone or like a meeting, and there's so much that can be done there to streamline. Another story from a survivor. It's really important with the network like around you. It's usually close family and friends that actually no. How do I stop this? Go away. Siri is listening. That's great. Who will like step in because those are usually the first step that someone feels comfortable to get like support from. So one of the early ways to actually help is to just educate the mass like populations about what are the early signs of like domestic violence, how can you help, and what are the pathways. So that's important. And really what we do is we make it easier to find the right kind of support. We are in Sweden right now mapping out, we actually did this very funny like research. It was my co-founder. She went on to every single municipality website and looked at like domestic violence page. And she found that, I think it was two out of three, you don't even find them on the 25 first pages when you search just a like Google search. And when you type in like the city name and also like domestic violence, they don't show up at all. She also found that about 69%, they don't put their opening hours on the page. And if you need to contact someone, you might need to plan that within your calendar, you know, to know this is when they're open, like, and this is Sweden. We're, you know, we have a support system, but yeah, there are things that can be done. And then she also found that about 240 out of 290 municipalities, they don't list the main number to social services on their site. And this is because the public sector thinks quite a lot about their own processes, and they think people know. They think people know that they can call like 112 and then from there get access to like social services, but this is not common knowledge. And we're flipping it and looking more at what is it that someone who's seeking help might be doing, might be thinking, and then creating the guiding pathways for that person, and not looking at the system and having the individual had to fit into some strangely like designed system that's been there for decades. And while doing so, we're also helping like the public sector to rethink how they're working and also the expectations of that. So this is typically how many different organizations that you need to speak with when you're being subjected to like domestic violence. It's quite a lot. And typically you're in contact with about 40 to 60 different people during the time when you try to leave. But what's good here too is that there's so much support, but you need to know about it. And there's quite a lot that can be helped. And in Sweden right now, we're starting to see instances where, for instance, the police is starting to collaborate with the healthcare system and also the social like insurance to start to map out and actually like working together to help prevent like domestic violence more early on. Because if someone contacts the police, it's too late. It should never reach that point. But a problem right now too is if you're in a very early stage, there's not actually that much support that you can get. So you kind of have to be in this like middle range of being like acceptable for like support. But what we're trying to do is to get these people to talk with one another and to collaborate and innovate together, and also helping to show this is how each one of these like instances can help you based on what you need. Interesting. So what we typically ask for, which is what this beautiful blank space here is like, what type of help that you want. Like this is one of the first things that you're being asked when you go like onto our platform. And it can be anything from needing help with like immigration, needing help with a like divorce, wanting just guidance, but we cater it to what you feel like you need within your situation. We ask you where you want support, not where you are, because there can be instances where you can map the IP address with your physical like location, and then by that knowing who that person is. So we're being very careful to not ask you where you are, but rather where you want the support. And you actually don't need to seek support within the same city where you live. You can go anywhere. So that's one thing I like that we do. And then we also ask what kind of gender and age, because some like organizations only give help to some type of user groups. We're looking quite a lot of trends. So the main data that we gather is actually like the help-seeking patterns of our different demographics. And it can be someone who hasn't realized that they're being subjected to violence, someone who hasn't realized that they're hurting their partner. It can be like the victims, it can be someone who is acting in an like abusive way. It could be friends and family, it can be coworkers, children, and each one of them would have like specific needs. So what we really look at is just like, what do they click on? Like, what do they like interact with on our website? And from that, make predictions based on, okay, within like Madrid, we have 290 children who want to speak to someone like about their pets, because they're worried that their pets is being hurt. And then we look at like those trends. Everything is aggregated. You can't trace it back to like the individual. And then we also look at how we can make like interventions to reach like specific segments of the population. So it can be those who might be extra vulnerable. For instance, elderly, it could be teenagers, it could be people like living with like disabilities, it could be people who are at risk of being subjected to honor-related violence, or these kind of factors. Also with like alcohol or drug like abuse could also be like contributing factors. And really starting to understand the first-hand like effects, but also the secondary and the tertiary, and mapping that together. And we're doing that together also with scientific researchers, because that's a little bit beyond our own reach. And we're having some like universities where we're working. Really what we're doing is just creating a one-way-in system. So you just come and you get all the support within one place. And we're not like creating the content, we're not really doing the work, we're just facilitating for others like to do it. And we're just providing the like technology built in a secure way, in a user-friendly way. And then it's really the public sector, the help organizations, or anyone like working with this who are creating their own storefronts like of the marketplace, like in a way. And we made it free for like NGOs because they usually don't have so much money, and they do a lot of work, and we want to help like support them so they can reach as many people as they can. And this is primarily for help seekers to find the like support that they need. So they just find these profiles that then link to other kinds of support. Yeah, we give them out to like organizations. Our like business model is also a like freemium model. So we have many people just subscribing, kind of like a Spotify for domestic violence, where you get to create a profile for free. But then if you want like any of the data insights, which the public sector and like other like national like organizations are more like curious to get, then you pay a small fee like monthly to be able to see that. We also have a profit like limitation, so any excess profit we reinvest it and build more tech, which is kind of fun. And also looking into areas where there might not be support. So we've been talking, for instance, with some regions within India where when like women like try to leave, they're actually being put in prison because that's the only place where they actually can host them in some parts of like India. And then to leave this prison, you have a man that comes and buys you out, and then rape is legal within marriage. And there's like so much that can be done there. I don't know if you're following what's going on in like Afghanistan right now, but right now the rights of women and girls are just being stripped down to like nothing. And there, our business model obviously would not work because the Taliban will never give us money to like do like such a thing. But we can then use that excess money that we've gotten from other parts and go there and support, or together with other like help like organizations. So that's really what we're looking at, and just making this free for like anyone who needs help. But what is this really doing? So we're going from the support to different data like insights, and the data insights, they're really mainly for the public sector or like bigger global like organizations, and it's for them to help better plan their resources. Right now, quite a lot of data is gathered on an annual basis, which creates problems when you have things like COVID showing up, or you have, for instance, spikes during holidays. There's also spikes that we see during actually football games, so like, you know, the World Cups and like these things. We see trends that this study was done like in the UK, so if a team wins, violence increases by 19%. If a team loses, violence increases by 38%. So it's like looking at those spikes, and that you are able to do when you start getting more like nuanced. And from COVID right now, like they still don't really know what the effects have fully been. We know that there was about 5 times increase in like help calls, but it's first now that we're starting to see like the aftermath. Like within Sweden, I think already after 3 months, we've had as many murders of like women as we normally do in 1 year. So it's starting to be felt like right now. But hopefully, if they can get more insights, then we can also plan the resources better and follow up. And one thing that the public sector loves to do is to follow up on what they're doing and like measuring and tracking that. So helping them with that too, and then also helping them to collaborate and actually like communicate with one another, because that's one of the main like inhibitors for why they don't do it today, because there's no secure way to do it. So we're building that for them. And then, yeah, working together with like academia. And then we're primarily looking at how can we support like academia with data to help them map out with the like individual impacts? We're primarily focused on ending deadly violence, but it could be other factors too. For instance, like it's quite common for someone to go back 8 or 9 times. So how can we reduce that cycle? We're looking at the societal costs of shortening these like cycles so they're not as long. And also to like identify gaps where maybe more knowledge is like needed, maybe there's some target group who's not getting help, and finding where that support is like needed, because there's so many like organizations who are ready to just, you know, like jump in if the funding is there. And I think one thing that was a big surprise to me when I started working with this is really how much like domestic violence influences almost every aspect of the whole like society. So there's a lot of hidden costs that are being labeled as something else. So for instance, within like mental health, that's also one of my areas of expertise. A lot of mental health like related like illnesses can actually have their origin from like domestic violence, because there's a lot of like chronic like anxiety, like depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, like many like disorders that are being like created from either witnessing violence like as a child, just being close to it, or being like subjected to it. Also suicide, I think it's like 17 times higher for this like user group. And suicide is actually something that primarily like impacts men. And why I think it's really fun to, okay, maybe it's not fun to work with like domestic violence, but sometimes too, is actually the cycle is cyclical. And it's not these like random outbursts of people getting angry and like hurting their partners. It's usually very planned. It's can even be that someone can, you know, text their partner and like say, you know, on Friday this is gonna happen, or it's this cycle that you can see the trends of how it's first might be like longer, and then it gets shorter and like shorter, and it can be less severe and going into more and more severe. And there's a very common like trajectory that usually happens, and usually it starts with this like big crush. It's very romantic, things happen very fast. It's quite common to move into like each other's like apartments very quickly, to propose, to, you know, all these like grand gestures. And then starts the control, which is usually like, you know, saying you can't wear this, wondering where you're going. And then you might seeing like physical violence, and then starts being like the regret. And this is a cycle that typically happens over and over. But with data, we can start measuring this and like looking at it and finding ways of when is the safest way to actually intervene. Because related to like domestic violence, 70% of the murders that happen are when you try to leave. It's a very critical point for society to be there and support at this stage. And I would say in many cases we fail to do it in a good way. If you suspect something, always ask. And it's always really caring to ask. And if someone needs help, maybe it's enough to just be there. And you don't need to do anything else, but just having someone to speak to is big, without judgment. Some other things to look out for is these like red flags that we could see. So if someone nearby you is more quiet or more tired, or they start to miss meetings, or start wearing these long sleeve clothing, have lowered like self-esteem, or have different eating patterns, or maybe there's like bruises like showing up, or maybe that they just stop seeing you. They don't want to hang out because isolation is very common. These are some things that you could look out for. They don't have to be like related to like domestic violence, of course, but it's common traits. And looking at the workplace. So one thing we found really shocking was 78% of like perpetrators will use the company resources to hurt their partner. About 60% of like victims might quit their job because they can't handle it, because being like subjected to like domestic violence. We see about 10 days per year of absence from work because of like domestic violence. And 50% of anyone being like subjected had an absence. But also to say the workplace is also a safe place for many people who are like subjected to violence. So it's also a place where you can find like interventions like for like support. And we're working right now like together like with like Accenture and also this other IT company called like HCL, together with their HR like departments, of how we actually can support with like domestic violence. Loss of productivity, I mean, yeah, that's a given, because it's hard to focus if you have that kind of situation at home. We call ourselves this like umbrella technology. We base everything from the needs of the person. And usually when we have pilots, we will just tell them like, if you have a magic wand, then what would you want to do? And then we build that for them. And we do it in these batches. We bring like organizations together that are usually within the same region, focus on a similar problem, or maybe focus on totally different problems, but they should talk because they're in like different fields. And then we like develop our products together with them. So they drive what we make. And we really create the conditions for like collaboration and these like larger like network like effects. We try to work cross-sector as much as possible. So it's anything from governments, legal, county governments, universities, NGOs, corporations, municipalities. And this is really what we do. So we're thinking global. We actually did this from start, even if we were a super small like startup, and going like local. So what's beautiful here is that you can enter at any point and start collaborating with any of these. So right now we are working together with like UN Women. One of our main advisors is from the World Health Organization, like helping us think about the data structure on the global level, which is fascinating. We're working with the European Parliament. Sweden is actually the host country right now for like domestic violence and driving many different changes for that, which for us is convenient because since we're Swedish, and now we get to be part of that process. We're also speaking quite a lot to the national governments, so it would be the like equality departments, the labor market departments of, and also the IT of how we can work, and then our main customers, they're here. I mean, it could be here, it could be here. Not so much in that end, but that's more the people who need the support. And what we're doing is mainly selling the data, and we sell the same data 7 times around, just at different levels and slightly different contexts. The tech itself, it's built in a very modular way. We like to think about it as Lego, so just switching on, switching off like functions wherever we are, changing interfaces for something else, switching out content. and really just like adjusting it like to the local needs, and also to the point where it's like it's not always us creating the interface, it's like the local like organizations who can choose like whatever they want for their own like profiles. We're co-creating the technology like with the public sector, and mainly what we're looking at here is to making sure that we don't build on their processes that might not be functional, because they have a lot of things they do that comes from legacy. So we're helping them clean that up and strip away things, and then helping them to make some of their like processes like digital. Not all of them should be digital, because some of them are like classified, so they're still within the folders and like the paper, but there's quite a lot that can be done. And in Sweden, there's a lot of open data too. So we're looking at how we can cross-pollinate the data that we get with the open data sources that are within the national systems. And we're also building it in such a way that they can just take our, we have this like XML file right now that they can just take and like insert like into their systems and like look at the data there. So working with their processes as much as we can. And yeah, another story. IT security is, yeah, a big thing. We're dealing with very, very sensitive data, and everything we build, we like triple, quadruple check it. We have these like end-to-end like encrypted like databases. We like separate them. We look at how we can strip away any like personal like identifiers. We even have this like security team who we like gave the challenge to, can we take away the IP address? Can you make sure that it like disappears? Not sure if we can do that or not, but we will see. But we're really trying to build it in a way where the individual owns their own data or lack of like data, and really have them to have the right to be hidden and not seen. And we know we're gonna get hacked, because everyone gets hacked. So it is more like, what do they find when they hack us or not find? So we're doing some like exciting work with, yeah, some different people here to see how well they can hack us. Oh wow, this moves. Some of it's, yeah, like something that we work with quite a lot is this like security by like design. So it's like thinking about like the threats like before you actually build something. And then having frequent tests, like whenever we ship something new, we'll do like pen testing and like try to hack like into it. And since we're working like with the public sector, like GDPR is a big thing, and also for the transparency and those kind of things. And I just wanted to finish with just teaching you of how to become a hero from someone who might need help. And if someone needs support, these are some of the things that you can say that are nice to hear. That it's not their fault, that you're worried about someone, you're here for them, you believe them, and that's enough. Just to be seen is big. And if they need support, these are some of the instances where you can turn to. Depending on what kind of support that they might need. So it's anything from the police, shelters, social services, help organizations, support groups, lawyers, psychologists. In some of these instances, they are obliged by law to take action. So that could also be something to have in mind. So for instance, the police, social services, we'll take further steps, which can be good, but in some instances, you might just want to speak with a help like organization, because then they won't know who you are. And then lawyers for the legal matters, which can also be tricky, like to navigate. Actually, the first thing we built was this evidence storing like module where we sucked everything up like in the cloud, and you could like store things. But we've been too scared to launch that on the market. But we'll do that when we're a bit bigger. And yeah, that was it from me. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much. I'm going to just have like a temperature check here in the room. You are close to 3 hours sitting down, which might be a record for some of you in a day. So my suggestion is to do a little break. You can stretch your legs and have a bit of fresh air. And I've been told to tell you in a little joke and emphasize, please don't eat the ham. Not yet. So come back maybe 10 minutes. We'll have a dynamic, fast, motivating roundtable, and then you can eat the ham and the drink and the music. So shall we do that? Let's see you in 10. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
That was brilliant.
Nice, thank you. And on time, good. Yeah.
Let's see how many people come back.
Se cierra la puerta de embarque, por favor. Acudan a su puerta de embarque. Last call.
Para mí es un...
Lo ha dicho ella.
No sé, ¿que es un microlino driver o qué?
No, que me había dejado.
Right. Do you need water? Anybody? No, you're good? Right. Well done for coming back. And the sooner we start, the sooner we can get outside. So thank you. It's been quite intense, those 3 hours of heavy topics with heavy data, but incredibly interesting and motivating. So at the beginning, we made the promise not to be a standard Q&A again. So trying to make this interactive and a little bit different. So my suggestion is to kickstart with a future projection type of question, understanding that we are not in Star Wars or any kind of fictitious world. So kind of let's put the answers to the reality at the pace that reality seems to be going these days. And my question, if I may start this. So for instance, Marta, in your presentation, you've talked about this interactive nature of the chat. You type something, the thing types back and produces things for you. So what's going to happen when that thing takes a human shape? When that thing, instead of being a chat, is a humanoid robot thing in front of you that is at home, does the things you want it to do, does the cleaning, or perhaps it starts having a relationship as another family member. How do you see that happening? And it's a question to the three of you. I understand you don't have a glass ball. This is not a kind of, you kind of guess in the future, but you know, your first line exposure to technology, how is that going to look like? And how far are we from that?
Hi. So again, I don't have that crystal ball, but I mean, as people, we try to humanize everything we interact with us. We think that dogs are talking to us. So something that actually is imitating so much the way that a person speaks, that looks like a person, certainly is gonna feel like a human interaction that from another side we are seeking constantly and so much. And the same way that Elinor was saying before, that just having somebody around is good for you. Maybe for people that are very lonely, having that machine around is also a help. So I guess you were leading the question towards, is this negative because it's going to remove the actual human interaction? But there are so many people out there that don't have really that human interaction, that these humanoids in a way may help them in the time being. Of course, ideally, we will be surrounded by very nice humans that care about us and help us in our daily life. So I can see, and I appreciate humans a lot, and I can see how that can remove some part of the human interaction that are as important to us as social animals. But I can also see some utilities of that interaction, like keeping your secrets, perhaps, or interacting with you at the level you need somebody at that specific point to talk to you, even if it's not really a person, right? But I mean, we see two dots and a line and we see a face. It's something that we do as humans, like humanizing things around us. So it could be also helpful sometimes, hopefully, and not only that part where we remove other people from around us, that of course provide us and give us many more things that just support, but they also give us ideas and things like that.
Well, my comment here is more in the sense like I think that it's time for all of us to think about what is humanity, to think about what we want from this artificial intelligence. Of course, there are it's very clear, maybe only for people that we're working with all the system, what this type of systems can do and what no. But maybe we need to define all this humanity from a philosophical perspective. I am very activist in this part to improve our education systems, that all the child need to be more critical about what is happening, what is, for example, information. This part of disinformation is very, very, very dangerous. We are living these opposites parts, and there are no communication between an idea and why there no exist this communication, because yes, these algorithms are creating this, right? So we need to be very critical at what this artificial intelligence show to us and how we can take or not take the advantage or the information about it. For example, I have a teenager, and sometimes I don't know if he knows what is the reality and what is a fake news, of course. So all the time you need to be very, very present as parent. But I think that it is a big issue that we are living now. If we as adults, sometimes we are in the fake news, what happened with the children, right? So I think that all the educational systems need to change quick, because this technology is here. Of course, I don't advise these decisions as Italy, of course, because we need to live with these technologies. But we need to ask us this question about what do we want of these technologies and what we are as humans.
We had a situation, we are involved in a project in a rather futuristic way in a Middle East country. And we had the interaction, some of us, to be in front of a humanoid. It was not a robot, it was just like a face, a bust that would emulate facial emotions. You would interact, you would actually talk to the thing, and the thing with the eyebrows would move, and it would go like this, it would go like that. And it became fun for a minute when we tried to trick it. So it's supposed to be some sort of concierge, so it's rather basic. Book me this, restaurant appointment, or whatever it is you may want the thing to do. But then there was one version of this robot thing that was there for your mindfulness moment. And that really kind of irritated a few of us. So we approached the thing with the absolute aim to break it. So we approached it, and the thing was in a very soothing, irritating voice. How may I help you today? So we were responding harsh. Do you want me to help you? No. Do you want me to help you? No. So that it got to a point, doing very silly little tricks with this thing, that it became obviously irritating for whatever it was being programmed behind that face and for the user. Because it started giving us advice, it was rather confused with a few more of these gimmicks that we were playing with it. So at the end, it started giving, like, telling us things that we didn't want to do. And at the end, basically, it short circuit. It went, I don't understand, I don't understand, I don't understand, I don't understand. So with very little interaction, we managed to break it. So long introduction to ask you, how ready are we for this? Because, I mean, I just put forward a really silly example on very basic interface, and surely will get more complex. But how irritating can it be for the human to have the machine in front of you, not reacting the way you expected, not being that efficient, not being that robotic, that knows it all? So what do we need to do as humans to get us ready for that interaction?
I think one aspect is time, because with these technologies, they're moving so fast, and our human minds do not, and our public systems do not. So we've had the luxury of time for up until now, but now we're really going to have to rethink how we're doing things at scale. And another thing that I see is this is a very profit-driven field, and a lot of the applications and the use cases. So for instance, this little robot, it's created by a company for the purpose of profit. And there's nothing wrong with making profit, but where is the profit and impact space? And we're seeing these giants like the Meta, Microsoft, Google just running because they want to be the first ones to control it. And then we have different countries competing with one another. And yeah, there's a lot of inequalities that can be created from this. And I think that is the role of us to think about of how do we mitigate that? How do we actually center it back to our human needs? And just AI in general will completely change how we even think about ourselves and our thinking, because before we've placed so much value on our analytical skills and how we as humans are smarter than animals or more valuable or on top of the food chain because of this, and now that's flipping. And I think that's going to have radical implications for society at large.
Well, about the example that you gave, I think that we need to do a step back. And the question is, for me, do we need this application or this robot? I think that we need to take care of our world, right? So this application is taking a lot of resource, natural resource, that we really don't need it. I think that I hope soon we need regulations about all this trash of applications that are created around the world.
Thank you. I'm opening it up to you now. Feel free to change the tempo. You don't have to just follow the same line. You can change the argument and ask anything. And if you're a little bit on the dry deck, we'll continue. So anybody wants to? Yes. Is there a mic over there? Yeah. No? We're short on mics. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to have the opportunity to ask in relation to the last of the talks on Bright Act. Thank you for the presentation and for the format. It was very nice to follow. And if I recall correctly, you mentioned you had good contact with ministers of equality across the EU, correct? Or not? I was curious on whether you had any contact, interaction, or ongoing projects with the Spanish Ministry of Equality, or any work or contact in that respect.
We have some within Catalonia, because I actually live there. And I would say they're very passionate people. I feel such a pool, and we have some like amazing people there who want us to come and do a pilot there. So I think we're gonna come to Spain soon. But if you have contacts, then you can make an intro. Yeah, since I'm here, and they've also offered to translate everything like to Catalan and also like to Spanish, which is quite interesting because then that opens up the market to 300 million people or however many that speak Spanish in the world.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Green.
Yeah, sorry. Regarding with the gender violence, you were talking about maybe distinguishing physical and psychological violence to like obtain patterns about the femicide. That's correct. Are you doing that? And how is like the patterns tendency? It will be very interesting for me. Yeah.
Yes. So there's actually many forms of like domestic violence that some people might not know about. Like you have latent violence, which is like the fear of something happening. This can be actually one of the most harmful ones and also really hard to prove. There's the like psychological, there's like material violence. Someone might destroy your property. There is economic violence when someone is like restricting your financial resources. There's the physical, sexual, and also the psychological, like you mentioned. But we're really looking at any of these trends in relation to any demographic that we work with in any region where they want the help, and also looking how this changes over time. And it could be with the variable of like deadly violence, but it could also be adding other variables. So for instance, we're collaborating together with like the Swedish alcohol like organizations, because you can't buy alcohol like in a normal store. Like you have to go to these special stores that's called like Systembolaget, and we're looking at researchers there of like correlations between like domestic violence and like alcohol, like consumption. But it could also be related to unemployment rates, because we know that when people are stressed, domestic violence goes up. Recessions, domestic violence goes up. So basically, whenever there is a crisis, domestic violence will most likely increase. So we're looking at quite a lot of different the correlations. And
Do you see any relationship between any correlation between soccer games and the increase of violence?
We haven't seen it in our data yet, because I think our data sets are too small to actually make like predictions yet. We need to get a bit higher up, like within the numbers first. But my assumption is strong, yes. But I will let you know once we're there. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Zinia. Thank you for your talk. If I recall it well, I think you mentioned, or you put into value the usage of qualitative information to complement the development of AIs. And I wonder if you have any tips or recommendations on how to use that, when to use it. I can assume that you can use it to decide what data sets or what data collection to make, how to train the data, and so on. But is there any I don't know, any relevant experience or examples or I don't know things that you can imagine that would add value to AI development?
Yes, the easiest way, I think, that is, for example, another question maybe that you ask me is this part of, okay, you present your data set, you say, okay, to a code or to an expert, and you interview, what do you think about this representativeness for this topic? For example, I was talking as an example, if you have a data set of 1 million of lines and you have only 2 Mexicans, but if the impact is to see if the people drives well, I think that it's not a big deal if you have have only these two persons. But if the impact is about migration of Mexico and the United States, of course, you have a problem there, no? So there, I think that you need to have the experts in the topic, and they, with their expertise, they will and that you show in the best way, you show what are your results, first results, your descriptive statistics, for example, for the data set that you have, in the case of the data set, then they will give you feedback, for example. Then you have, for example, in cases as violence, as I mentioned of IT, for example, that here the problem that UNICEF asked as our help was to map the violence regions, the most violence regions, to give more help in these regions to help the children, right? But we don't have data, so the idea there was to collect data through a survey, but this survey with a lot of sensitive data, sensitive and dangerous for the people who are answering this survey by telephone, because we can't travel there. No one can move to one place to another. It's very, very dangerous now, IT. So in this case, of course, we are biased because we have only the persons that can have access to a telephone, but it's the only data that we have, right? So in this case, and with these persons that we have this interview, we try to have the more information, the most possible information about quantitative, qualitative, et cetera, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? And what happened when a children starts in a gang? Why? What do you think? If there is a problem of money, yes, no. Is the family present? Yes, no. So we try to define semi-structured interviews. We wanted to do focal groups in this case, but it was impossible to have these persons. So as I told you, you need to be very creative. In this project in particular, we are using a database created with GDELT, with this database of the press, but it's biased too in IT because they are only publishing not exactly in the right direction, in the right address, and they are only publishing the big events of violence. So it's very biased through that something. Then we are using a satellite image to try to define the satellite image and OSM data, this OpenStreetMap, to see where there are nightclubs, that maybe there is a more dangerosity. Where are the schools, if there are near the schools of the nightclubs? All this information, it's very useful in these types of cases. But all the time, we are working with persons that are experts in violence and in IT, because of course you need to have this expertise. IT in particular is very different, the violence of IT, than the violence of the continent. And the continent is related to drugs, and IT is related to other types of gangs, criminality, but not at all related to drugs. So we need experts in this type of violence that they can tell us, maybe with this information you can find something. So with a brainstorm of creativity, okay, let's see this database, if it can be helpful for us.
I have a question. Yes, you have to agree on that question. I know you are very passionate about your topics and the things you are working on, but my question is, if someone can hire you as a team, which kind of problem do you like to solve or to address? Which kind?
I start. Well, I think that I work in the best field, because I feel that we are doing something, So, for example, violence, for example, poverty, inequalities. So, from my side, I think that I am yes, it's very good but it's very bad, because each project that we work on, all the projects are very interesting, so we want to work in all the projects. So Yes, we have a limited time.
I mean, I sell T-shirts, but so wherever these guys think is important, they are probably right. I think poverty and democracy are probably the keys there. Like letting people choose by themselves, even if they choose wrong, whatever. That's what democracy is. And ending poverty. If you are hungry, you are not free. You are not free to choose. You are not free to live an abusive environment, and that would be for me the keys. But I mean, they are the experts on saving the world. So.
But you have data, and we don't have data.
For me, it's working with the future generation. So they're working with children, making sure they grow up in homes that are safe, loving, and also have the resources they need to like thrive, and not just those children, but also the generations past that. And yeah, they're the most pure souls, I think. So for me, it's like working with the children and also ancient ecosystems. So I would definitely see myself like in the future protecting ancient forests, because those for me are the most intelligent organisms we have on this planet, and it makes me really sad that we're destroying them at the rate that we're destroying them. So, but it all comes together, I think.
I want to put a question back to you in the same topic before I hand to you. You have so far amazing careers with amazing achievements that you've shared with us today. But if you were to rewind back and kind of go, I mean, you're not that old to take a stock and say, I wish I had, but let's imagine you do that exercise. So your younger self, the little girl that didn't know you're going to end up sitting here today, that you were going to deal with data, that you were going to be worrying and solving these problems. What would you tell your little self about doing different, working with other people? What was the little girl hearing from the older girl now?
No, that's not fair. Oh, this well, difficult question. So I think that maybe to know more about this sector that I am working now of human development, because at the beginning I studied actuarial science, right? So this is very financial, et cetera, et cetera. So it was completely outside what I am working right now, no? But it's exactly the same theoretical thing, and I think that maybe I lost time doing other things in my life, but maybe no, because I have this perspective that, okay, you can use this algorithm of genetics because this one has exactly the same problem and you can put it here, right? So I don't know, maybe, but yes, this part of maybe working for things that there were no interesting for me, like finance, for example, maybe yes. Sorry if someone here works in finance. That's my point of view.
Okay. So for me, it's hard to make a reconstruction on saying, okay, this decision I would have done differently because I'm kind of content with my life. I like what I do, and I like my friends and my family and so on. I always sometimes think how struggling going through research and a PhD was, and interacted in all the research world that was not welcoming or it was not nice or even encouraging. But then it put me in a position when I learned many things that I still use every day. So I wish I could have learned those things in a nicer environment, I guess. I hope that environment exists for future generations, and that's exactly what I try to build at work every day. So every young people that joins the team, every young woman and man that joins our team has a better experience at learning complex things that I had, that they don't have a competing environment, but a nurturing environment. That's what I can do. That's my reach to change my own experience in the past. But I have problems to see my career as a line. Like everything, we were discussing that before, everything kind of feels like a dream. So like things just happen disorganized, and I end up here today. But it could have happened differently. I will still be here perhaps, and maybe talking to you about things that matter. And but I don't see that tipping point. But what I try to do is to not make other people pass through the bad experiences I had. That's the best I can do. But
I think looking back, I would have skipped school and like not go to school at all, and instead focused on my own creativity and like creating these like micro like experiments for myself of like, oh, today I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna solve this thing and create this project, and also not feeling like I'm a designer and this is what I need to do my whole life. No, like I think we can like shift roles and like do other things and like really like experiment. And going back to your question with like AI, and I think that's what's so cool with our world now, that we don't have to do these like mundane things anymore. We can have like technology help us and help us learn way faster, and then also shift, and even creating copies and duplicates of ourselves that will do the work for us. So I think this is really great. And yeah, so maybe one day I would want to be like a physicist. Maybe one day I would I don't know, like work in a laundry store, and then the next day I would do something else. But I would want to switch around quite a lot, because I think you learn a lot from that, and grabbing that like inspiration into other fields and causes that I care about.
Thank you. You answered, the three of you. It took a little long, but it did. Do you have a question? Yes.
So one of the things that I think goes in all of you is the new situation with European Union, US, and UK. So for example, UK have released a new white paper on AI and data. European Union is also with the algorithms. You have to actually explain how they work. How do you see, or if you're working already from your companies and your organizations in this field, and how do you see, because at the end of the day, the data is important, but also the algorithms, and they will have an impact on peoples and in companies. So how do you see this is going to move forward? Because in lots of cases, the politicians, they don't know anything about technology. So the risks are pretty high, and we could end up in a worse place than we are right now, even though right now it's challenging. So how do you see this is going to move on?
The European Commission has this group of experts, and in this group of experts, in general, there are technical people of high level. So in this case, they have this idea of what is happening. Of course, the persons who decide at the end the regulation are not technical, but they have these advisory groups that I think that is a good way to more or less understand what is happening. Then, for example, I have this example of France. In France, with the first period of Emmanuel Macron, Cédric Villani, the mathematician, was the person who bring the strategy, the AI strategy of France. So this was very technical. Of course, he as a mathematician, but and philosopher, and it was this humanity for AI, or AI for humanity, or something like that. So I think that these good examples in some countries can give an idea of where we can go. The conclusion that I put is exactly the conclusion of the report of Cédric Villani. I think that the main idea is to avoid these black boxes, of course. Of course, depending of the type of algorithm that the type of answer that you want from this algorithm, you know, if it is an important decision, I think that you don't need a black box. If it is, it's avoid completely a black box. But if it is only about a recommendation system, well, you can have a black box, right? It's not a big issue about recommendation system of t-shirts, for example. You can have a black box. It's not a big impact in the society and in the principles. But I don't know, what do you think, Margarita?
So we were exploring the last regulations that were not approved yet. They make a lot of sense to me. There are like different levels of criticity depending on who is affected by the decision of the algorithm. Anything that affects people, people's jobs, needs to be decided by a human. So you can rely on algorithms to do some calculations for you, but the final decision is human. Humans are not unbiased, by the way, but still they are people and they are accountable and they can be responsible of their own decisions, hopefully, to their ethical level, of course. But any other model, like she was suggesting, what you are required to do is to report which features you are using for the calculations, and anything that is not even for a recommender system that can seem completely like daily life, and how can a recommender system can insult you, or it could get a racial profile on you that could be terribly insulting in many ways. If you just get recommended random things, I mean, I could get very offended, me as a woman, to just get recommended shows that I don't watch, that I'm not gonna confess that I watch, about rom-coms or something like that, just because my profile says woman, I will get very offended. So in that regulation, when you select which features you are gonna add to your recommender system or to your algorithm, don't include gender, don't include race, don't include certain things that could create a fake profile about you that includes your own personal biases, right? Or the biases or the people around that. So it's twofold. In one side, don't make automatic decisions that affect people's lives. And in the second side is don't use features that you know can end up insulting somebody's religion or somebody's day. Like at the end of the day, you don't want to ruin anybody's life just by recommending them movies or T-shirts or anything like that. But the regulation makes those as different critical points, and I think it makes sense to me at least.
I'm looking at the watch now and counting on your blessing. I am, at least I'm going to close it down on my side, but I'm going to give still the word to you. On my side, I would like to express profound gratitude for having had the opportunity not only to listen to you, but to interact with you. I think you're three amazing women, thought leaders in this, and I think it's been our privilege in Astara to be able to count with your presence, and really it's been fascinating. So thank you on my side, and thank you for asking me to be here, because I think this is great, so thank you. Now, I've been joking about the ham, and the ham is still there for you, but I want to finish this in the way that makes sense for you. So are there any comments, questions, any statements that you'd like to make that would make this event finish in the best possible way for you? I'm asking you that, and then I'm asking them. So you don't have to make a brilliant statement, by the way. You can say anything.
There is one question.
Oh, there's one question online. Go on, Lina.
Someone from the audience, from the stream, is asking, how do you recommend to approach the concerns of future job about AIs?
I think the future jobs issue, It goes down to inequality, like mainly. Like I think quite a lot of jobs that we're gonna see being automated are perhaps in like countries where they might need a job. So for instance, like call centers, and that's their source of income. Developers, ChatGPT. I mean, it's kind of learning how to code itself, but I think that's super cool. That would be a fun one to see what happens there. But I really hope that we see a future where our time is freed up, because I don't think it makes sense that we work the way we work. Like, why are we working 8-hour days? And a lot of people. Okay, maybe some people work more. And a lot of people don't even like what they do for work. So maybe that can be redefined. There's going to be issues with compensation and how that money gets like distributed and the resources. And hopefully we can come together as humans and care for one another. We'll see. That will be the state of humanity.
I'm voting for you wherever you.
Design my t-shirts.
We are a team. Anyhow, I hope everything that she said is actually true. Like, and that is the issue as always. Like, people that can choose a job or a different job will also have that opportunity in the future because they are educated. We are educated. We can choose to a different profession and convince somebody else that we will be good at that eventually. And the struggle is always with the people that don't have the chance to choose, and that will also be the case. So any critical change, it happened with mines, it happened with cars and building cars, that these are the jobs that are highly professionalized on something very specific on manual labor, that are always the first one to suffer because nobody cares about the one who suffer because they don't make the decision. So this is like any other of those critical points in humanity, right? Like, and I really hope we care for each other and we teach each other how to move to the next step by working less and no more and working better and happier all together. So yeah, I hope so.
I would like only to finish this with an example of that I think that it was a good example for this type of situations. In Rennes, in Brittany, in France, they have a very ambitious program of transport. So they want to move to autonomous transport for 2030. And of course, this big problem of the drivers of the current transport, right? So the first thing in the agenda was a negotiation with the drivers. And they did, at the end, they decide negotiation of each one, decide what to do, and the government help for each decision. So, for example, the younger, in general, they wanted to have another skill. So the government pay for this skill, just training, whatever. Other persons were, no, but I'm just 10 years for the end of my work life, so to do another training, I don't think. So they decide to put them in a specific part of the transport, for example, that they have little buses, and these little buses are for children sometimes, or for older people, etc., etc. So they will continue working in this little transport. And for the oldest, the idea was to advance the the retirement. So I think that this is very fair for this type of big decisions, that you will not use the persons that are working with you.
Thank you.
So it's a wrap again. I would like to thank you, all our speakers, and Natalia, to conduct this event. Thank you to the innovation team, people teams, com teams, everyone here in Astara. I think that the topic today opens a new topic for the next, no move, don't move, for the next winter edition, which is the ethics and the boundaries of AI applied to humans, right? So you are invited, maybe from the distance, we don't know, but you are invited to come here also. But thank you so much. I think that is the time to eat, drink, and move your feet, okay? Thank you so much. See you in the next one.